America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could have the reading of the mission and vision, please.
The vision of Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
And the mission of Richmond Community Schools guides students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you both. Moving on to item 2, celebrations. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, I ask that communication specialist, Ms. Bridget Hazelbaker, approach the podium and present tonight's celebratory invitations.
You guys may have about that successful training that we have.
Yeah, you might not at all. Don't like it.
Not today.
Okay, now we have to roll.
Do my best. If you can't hear me, let me know. Good evening. My name is Tim Arnold. I'm a district e-learning specialist here with RCS, and I'm representing our team tonight. That includes Joni Robinson and Jeremy Hill. Jeremy is on vacation this week with his family, probably fishing somewhere. And Joni was planning on being here, but her son was playing in the state Little League championship game, which they won, and they're now going to represent the state of Indiana in the Great Lakes Regional. So hooray to her and her. So you get me tonight. Last Wednesday, July 20th, we were very pleased to host a statewide Summer of Learning conference here in Richmond, one of 14 in the state. And as I think you know, we are the longest running e-learning conference in the state. This is our 9th year to do that. And that culminated a process that started back in October when we applied through the IDOE. We were awarded a conference in November and started planning from that point on. Last Wednesday, we put on 48 separate sessions with 46 speakers. And we had 39 school corporations represented here at Richmond High School on that day, getting professional development. Clearly, it takes a team to do this, and so thank yous from our team to the RCS administration and board for giving us that opportunity. Our technology staff, Mr. Brandon Perkins here, and all the group that he brought over to help us that day. The Richmond High School administrative staff. And a special shout out to Mr. Spiker on the RHS Environmental Services team. They knocked it out of the park for us the week before, the day of. So when you see him and his crew, please give them a shout out. The folks at Civic Hall took care of us. Chartwell's here from Richmond Community Schools, and of course the Indiana Department of Education, which funded a large portion of that. We had sponsors that we got that took care of breakfast, lunch, and snacks in the afternoon, and also the swag we were able to hand out to the people that showed up. The little red notebook there with pen, that's an example of some of the swag that we gave out, and so we wanted you to have some of that as well. We had a tremendous number of vendors and door prizes. Thank you to Bridget Hazelbaker for organizing that. 27 area groups of all types, and in excess of 50 door prizes to give out at the end of the day. All set off by our keynote, a gentleman by the name of Matt Miller, who's an Indiana native, and actually his dad, Jeff, was a Richmond High School graduate back in, I believe, 1973 or 4. And he came to speak, and he spoke on the art and science of memorable teaching and encouraged people to take calculated risks in their classroom and emphasized not teaching a lesson, but creating an experience. And so with that, I'll take any questions that you have, but we're very pleased to put this on, happy that we pulled it off, and looking forward to do it again if we are given the opportunity.
What was one of like the seminars or the speakers? Can you tell us just one?
Sure. We had, of those 48 sessions that we had things, the following strands. Literacy, there were topics of literacy, digital learning, learning loss and retention and remediation, STEM, and then anything else kind of fell into an other category. So those are kind of the 5 big strands that we offered among those 48 sessions.
You took some time to thank everyone who did everything, and I guess we probably would want to thank you and your team for organizing that, putting that together, and bringing teachers from across the state together to learn some exciting information. So thank you.
All right, very much appreciated.
Yeah, I was there for the keynote, and I mean, it's hard to believe. It's just, I know you thanked everyone else, but the three of you, the work that takes is tremendous. And I know Mrs. Sonsini, I'm sure you're more aware of it, how much was put in than I am, but it really showed. I mean, you guys did a fabulous job. I'm appreciative.
And I too was in attendance. I think the presenter was rather unique and dynamic, and he was able to indeed maintain full engagement and attentiveness from the audience, especially with some of his props that he used. Seeing him jump in and out of such wardrobe to really drive home and sell the nature of what it is that was being learned and professional growth was great. But most importantly, the amazing educators that had sacrificed their time this summer to come in and continue to improve upon the craft. Kudos to everyone involved. So thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just think it's important to point out that this isn't your guys' only gig, right? I mean, you continue to support all of the schools in all of the technology stuff that we're bringing out. So
Yeah.
that's
We had a day job.
yeah.
And then we did
Well, and I think kudos to you guys because that's a big part-time job that you added to that, and it sounds like how many districts? How many?
39 districts.
39 other districts came for this. So.
Yeah,
And you're the longest running one, so that's impressive.
Do you have a number of how many people attended? Or?
We actually had 245 signed up. Actual attendees were like 125, which isn't unusual. You
Right.
usually get a little bit of drop off. It's a big vacation week. Also, as I was explaining to Mr. Weber, we don't charge. We're probably the only one in the state that we don't charge money. We want everything to be free, including the meals for the day. Is that something to think about in the future? Is there an amount that people have skin in the game so they'll go? I don't know. This is the way we've always done it, so we've continued that way. But it's something we'll discuss if we're given the chance to do it again.
Thank you.
Thank
Well
you.
done, thank you. All of you.
Before we move on, can Nicole hear us? Can you hear us, Nicole?
She's gonna try to hear us through YouTube right now. So, or if someone would like to call her on their cell phone, she just doesn't have that capability right now with the connection.
No, I was wanting clarification to know whether she can be counted as present or not.
Yes.
And I'm not sure she can if we're not interacting in real time with either her or the public simultaneously. But that doesn't mean she can't continue to observe.
So would a phone call suffice, or?
Well, I'm not sure that phone
Okay.
communication is available to the public. I think the statute envisions it like a Zoom connection.
She's unmuting here.
You can't hear us?
Can you put it on speaker?
She just left the meeting.
All right.
Well,
I have you on speaker.
she's perfectly welcome to.
Yeah, but now she's off. She's off of there. Does she know that, or she's watching? I guess
She's that's totally appropriate. She just can't
You're with us by phone.
count or vote.
Okay.
Count as part of the board. So technically she's absent but participating via telephone.
You cannot vote according to Mr. Cross, but you are present with us.
Okay. Is Bridget able to try the Google Meet again? I mean, or is that just not gonna work?
If that's available to the public, yeah. Can public tap into that also?
Google Meet,
No.
We can't broadcast her yet. Okay.
All right.
negative.
Just,
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3, public commentary. Before we start, I'll read a short statement. The Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters. The board wants to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely, efficient manner. The maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. The board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directive, abusive, and obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available in policy 8130. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting. The public participant will receive a personal follow-up email from the board president within a week. Thank you. Mrs. Hazelbaker?
Do you want this list?
Usually you just call the person forward.
Beth Lips.
And if you would say your name and what district you live in.
I'll keep
I don't
time.
have a teacher voice.
And
but I'll
Mr.
try.
Walton is keeping time. So
Do what?
Mr.
I'm
Walton's
keeping time, I'll let you know when there's.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
So
So
thank
my name is, good evening. My name is Beth Lips. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak tonight. I'm the parent of a student, Emma, who attends Richmond Community Schools. I've been a longtime observer on school board meetings on YouTube, and I've recently begun attending meetings in person. However, this is my first time speaking in a meeting. I'm only a parent. My only skin in the game is my daughter's education, but I feel like that's pretty important skin. Emma's attended RCS since she was 3 years old. Since day one, we've always felt very supported by the principals, teachers, and support staff. In addition, we have had teachers and paras who have worked tirelessly to help Emma succeed. When I attended my first in-person board meeting in May, I had no idea what I was in for. I didn't realize that many educators would be here voicing their concern. It was a busy meeting. Although I honestly didn't know their concerns. Emma's teachers and support staff have always been so professional that they always made me feel like it was their privilege to teach her. Even though many of them were suffering behind the scene, they never let us as parents see them sweat. As they spoke, I listened to many of their stories and my heart kind of broke for them. The thing is yeah, I know that teachers were upset by dollar insurance, things like that. That's not a surprise, but I don't really think it's about the money. Teachers are leaving this community in droves. These are excellent long-term educators, many of whom have positively affected my daughter's life for a long time. Some of these educators have been forced out. Some have left on their own accord. My daughter had 3 principals last year. I'm a little concerned about 3 principals in 1 year. And I know, we all know, funding is not high on Indiana's priority list. It's just not. That's why we have expensive book fees. But where I'm going with this is that educators are probably not leaving all because of money. As you stated in the Western Way News, the state requires its schools to spend 45% of their budget on payroll, and RCS spends about 56% on payroll. Many Indiana schools, as we stated, are not even to that 45% mark. So they either have these enormous budgets or they really aren't paying that great either. Honestly, I think they're leaving because of you guys, the school board of trustees. The staff at RCS, they just don't seem to feel appreciated, valued, respected. And I kind of understand why. The teachers are human and they want some security, appreciation, and just some acknowledgement for the job that doesn't begin and end with a school bell. They've gotten not much of that from what I can tell. My first school meeting was terribly unpleasant as I watched the teachers and students pour their hearts out, unsure of their future, and one teacher actually resigned. Some people were rolling their eyes, and it was a little cringy to kind of sit here and watch that back and forth. And so I sat in the corner, a little secondhand embarrassed, and just waited till the end. I stayed till the end of the meeting, which I believe was close to 3 hours, and most people didn't stay. When the meeting was over, you guys kind of patted each other on the back, shook hands, and you left like it didn't bother you, but it really bothered me. The school board as a whole kind of has an us against them mentality. It just feels that way when the teachers are present. However, after they left, it did change a little bit. But what I would encourage everyone here to do is to reflect on the choices that were made this past year and ask what we can do differently going forward. Here's what I would like to see as a parent. In the May 11th edition of the Western Way News, again, I like that paper, it was reported that the board would like to have sit-down discussions with the community to speak what it entails to be a board member. In addition, the deadline is quickly approaching, if it hasn't already approached, to register to run for office. Okay. So when do you plan on holding these meetings? Have they already happened? How are the meetings going to be announced? According to your Facebook page, this is a big one, you have 73 positions open. I believe 19 of those are paras. I'm here to tell you that paras played an essential part in my daughter's education, and I'm very concerned about the shortage. Respectfully, none of you guys have had a part in teaching my daughter long division, but the paras and the teachers have. How are you planning on recruiting and most of all retaining these teachers and staff? Do you have a plan? Because you really should have a plan. It's 2 weeks. This is such a disservice to our children. These kids suffer, and I don't expect you to be able to fill these positions. You can't put this on the principals. Many of these principals, it's their first year with us, and it's 2 weeks before school starts, and they're just now starting, and they have to staff a whole school. I suggest you have roundtable meetings, small groups with teachers, with principals, with staff, and really act on it and be better at communicating with the teachers and staff. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brandy Burden.
Hi, my name is Brandy Burden. I have a son that's going into the high school and a son that's going to Dennis Middle School next year. My vote of confidence in every single one of you is 0 right now. My son at Dennis last year, and I emailed every single one of you, had an incident of a teacher that bullied him in front of his whole entire peers. She is now on a no contact order. We have a teacher on a no contact order that cannot contact or interact with a student, with my son coming into Dennis. Dr. Wright, I personally have called you several times and came and visited you, and you've refused to talk to me every single time. I came to you over this last incident. Dawn was there and helped out. You refused. So I vote 0 confidence in you guys right now. My son is going into Dennis next year, and Dennis has been the worst. It's been the worst. We have new changing of staff going on, and teachers are leaving. We're letting good teachers leave, and you guys are keeping the teachers that are bullying our students. You're keeping them. You said it's okay. That's what you said. You said it's okay for her to do what she did, and she's staying. So I'd like to know how that no contact order is going to stand for the next 2 years with my son going into Dennis, because you have a teacher that now cannot contact the students. She can't teach him. He cannot be in her classroom because I will go after her for harassment. After what she did to my older son, I'm done. You guys can do better than that. Richmond can do better than what we're doing. I'm ashamed to say that both my kids go to Richmond schools right now. And if I had the means to pull them out and take them someplace else, I would. But I don't have the means. I'm a single parent. Pray to God my kids get through the school year. The next 4 years for the high school and the 2 years for the middle school and then 4 more years. So how are we going to keep him safe from this teacher that bullied my son? How is this no contact order going to stand? How, he doesn't get to take the classes that she teaches. And I hope and pray that the new people taking over Dennis is well aware that she cannot contact him. I mean, she called me through Facebook Messenger to try to reach me because she wasn't my son's teacher. And so she didn't have access to my information is what she said. She tried to video chat me on Facebook, and she got a slap on the hand and is allowed to teach again. I'm very upset about that because we've let good teachers walk away and we're keeping teachers. We've kept a teacher that bullied a student in front of his whole entire peers and got a slap on the hand. I see the no bullying. You guys have a no bullying policy. I don't see it. I don't see it. I see it as crap right now. So what's good for the teacher should be good for the student. If you guys wonder why our students are teaching our teachers like crap, it's because our teachers, some of them, not all of them, some of them are teaching our students like crap. But the teachers that are back here with it's time for change are good teachers and they're ready to walk. I met with a para that I just happened to meet over summer who has a second job working at Lee's Chicken because she can't afford anything else. Because she doesn't get insurance. She doesn't get anything. Paras are what? They help. My son that's going into middle school wouldn't have made it through math class without paras because he's got a verbal learning disability. So I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that you guys are letting good teachers walk away, and we've kept the teacher that bullied a student in front of his whole classmates. I'm ashamed to say that. I'm ashamed to say my kids go to Richmond. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Hazelbaker.
T. Washington.
Thank you.
T. Washington, teacher at Hibbert. I'm actually here in opposition of two topics that are on your agenda for this evening. The first topic is the NIET, professional development that supposedly is coming our way. I found out yesterday that Hibbert now is taking part in this, even though we were told originally we were not going to be taking a part because one, we're not a school, and two, we don't have a school improvement plan. So it makes no sense as to why we're now being sucked into this NIET business. If someone asks me what that is, I still can't tell you. Even though we've had several corporate discussion meetings about that topic, I still felt like we haven't had any meaningful discussion about it. And I feel like it's being rushed. To spend $230,000 for this, where that could be used elsewhere, it just blows my mind. So there's teachers who already don't have buy-in into this. And that's what happened with 8-Step. So just want to give you a heads up. If this follows through, you're going to have teachers who are not going to buy into this. And you have to have buy-in before you move any further with this. So I'm just disappointed in that one, Hibbert now is supposedly taking part in this, and that two, that you're going through with this, even though we still don't know what the heck it is. The second topic is the Meridian with the nursing services. I'm standing here in solidarity with the nurses because I feel like that too has been pushed through very quickly without any meaningful discussion. Having been gone through blindsidedness with early college this past year, how that kind of went down, I feel like that same situation happening with this Meridian decision as well. You have awesome nurses who have stuck around, been very loyal, and with this decision, you're gonna lose them. Just like we're losing good teachers and support staff right now. I don't know why we continue to outsource services. I feel we are doing a pretty good job. I just don't get it. So that is why I'm here today. One, in opposition to NIET, and two, stand in solidarity with the nurses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Christian.
I'm not reading a whole book, I just have notes in here, I promise. I'm Emily Christian, I've been here before, you know me. I'm here to talk about e-learning, and I've talked about e-learning before also, but we've gotten the message about adding another, or about the new calendar and the potential adding another built-in e-learning day. And while I understand that we're doing the best that we can with those e-learning days, I still don't understand why we're building them into the plan. We know that they're not getting the most out of the day of school if they are not in school with them or with the teachers. So the students don't get as much. Preschool students get nothing because e-learning is not part of their curriculum. They cannot do e-learning with preschool. So they just lose a day completely. Every para and other hourly staff lose an entire day of pay. And I know that you have things set in where they can do after school help and do that sort of thing, but since our paras aren't really paid very well, they have to have second jobs, so after school time is the time for their second jobs. And teachers cannot give complete attention to the students for e-learning while also doing parent-teacher conferences and professional development at the same time. So we've heard that even the state of Indiana is wanting to limit us to 3 days. So even the state of Indiana agrees that e-learning are not good days. why are we gonna maximize and have the most of the less efficient days that we possibly can? Why don't we use e-learning as the exception, and if we absolutely need to use them, rather than building them into the program? I'm concerned about that, and I feel like it's just a way to not have to pay the paras. Maybe it's something different. I don't know. Everybody that I've spoken to has said they hate e-learning. So I would like to hear discussion today, if possible, about what the good in having the built-in e-learning days would be. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. All right. Moving on to item 4, consent items. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, I come before you to ask for approval of consent items 4.01 through 4.05, as well as the addendum as presented.
Entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the consent items as presented.
Motion by Jeff Schleifer,
Second.
second by Aaron Stevens. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0.
President Weber, before we move on to item 5.01 with regard to the presentations, with you all's last approval of consent item 4.02, the human resources as well as the addendum, we just officially welcomed a handful of new leaders as well as educators to our school district. And what I would like to do is ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker come to the podium and join me in welcoming our new building as well as central office leaders. And as our new leaders come to the podium, they will indeed introduce themselves as well as share just a few items. So the first leader that we will ask will be Mr. Steve Jones from Charles Elementary School. Mr. Jones, if you don't mind joining us here on the podium to share just some insight, your number of years with the district, as well as some of those things that you're most looking forward to as we move forward.
I'm pretty plain. It's what you see is what you get. I spent the last 3 years at Westview, and I'm jumping over to Charles Elementary. So, it's gonna be a new experience, different. Just happy to be part of the team and, continue to learn how to use data and whatnot and go from there.
One of the things that Mr. Jones has done since my arrival here in the district has been as selfless in his service as well as his ability and willingness to jump in when needed and where needed. As Mr. Jones has shared, his passion is for students and the faculty and staff that serve alongside him, and we definitely are excited to know that Mr. Jones is commandeering Charles Elementary School, and indeed will take years, many experienced years, to that campus.
Well, we hope in my 17 years as a building administrator, hopefully I can continue and build upon what's been done there by, Ms. Phillips was there for several years and so on. So, just like I said, just happy to be part of the team and just keep moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Did I see an event with you tomorrow, maybe, Mr. Good?
Yeah, we finally, my fob finally started working about 2 o'clock today, so I finally got into the building, which is great. So nothing like showing up and we don't get it until somebody else got there this morning. So, we're popsicles with the principal tomorrow. We're gonna do registration ends at 6. We're gonna move out to the playground and hopefully we'll get some family members there and see and they can learn all the great things about me and go from there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
President Weber, trustees, I now ask that Mrs. Jennifer L. Loriaga, our new principal of Crestdale Elementary School, come to the podium to share a little bit about herself and what she is most looking forward to as she takes over the helm there at Crestdale.
Thank you for being chosen to lead Crestdale. I've been in the district for 19 years, in a couple different schools, so definitely excited to be back at Crestdale, working with some amazing staff. Really looking forward to getting to know the families and the students at Crestdale and leading them through this year of change.
And Mrs. Oluwaga is a Richmond native,
Yes,
born and raised, and a RHS graduate, and as she mentioned, veteran educator, taking over an amazing building. We thank you, Mrs. Oluwaga. Thank you. Unfortunately, Mrs. Melissa Jordan, who is now the new principal at Star Elementary School, who has been at Star Elementary School, she's almost an institution in and of herself for the past 22 years. She's been selflessly serving there at Star, and so she will be commandeering the helm as head principal at Star. Unfortunately, Mr. Jordan cannot be with us this evening, and so we indeed will hear from her down the road. The next.
Dr. Wright?
Oh, yes.
Excuse me, I do have a message from her.
Oh, great. Go for it.
Is it okay if I read that?
Absolutely.
She said, I am so sorry that I cannot be here this evening. As a product of Garrison Elementary, Test Middle School, and Richmond High School, I was blessed to have learned from the amazing teachers that teach here. Now you have given me that chance to lead in a building in which I have spent my entire teaching career. I am deeply honored in your belief in me, and I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. I am looking forward to taking on the challenges of my new role.
We give her a round of applause. The next building level leader that I am going to ask to join us is Mrs. Nicole Vandervoort. Mrs. Vandervoort will be commandeering the head principalship at Vell Elementary School. And Mrs. Vandervoort, as we know, has been a self-service educator here in Richmond for some time. So Mrs. Vandervoort.
Yeah, I'm entering my 10th year here at Richmond Community Schools, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with Vail students and parents, and I've already felt a very warm welcome from the staff, so I really appreciate the opportunity for this upcoming school year.
Mrs. Vandervoort, as we know, she is very astute when it comes to processing and analyzing and diving into data. And so I know that at Vell Elementary School, with the successes that her predecessor and the amazing team of teachers there at Vell, she'll definitely be able to build upon that excellence. We appreciate your service. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next up is new school principal at Westview Elementary, succeeding Mr. Steve Jones. And the gentleman's name is Mr. Max Smith. Mr. Smith, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and what you're most excited going into this new school year.
Absolutely. I'm Max Smith. I'm born and raised in Richmond. Still live in Richmond. I was a student of Westview, so I'm very excited to start my building level leadership career at the place where my education started. There's a fantastic staff already in place there, and been thankful to you all for the opportunity, of course, and also to Mr. Jones for lending his support as I transition into this new role. And I just look to build upon the work that they've already done there and support the students, staff, and the community in the place where I grew up.
And so it's full circle for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And we definitely appreciate and welcome you back to Richmond.
Do you also have an event?
Yes, we're having a small little cookout at the playground tomorrow. Same time as Mr. Jones's event at the other school at 6 p.m. Just to have a little meet and greet opportunity to meet the parents and the staff and students and, put out a good, first impression to the community, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Next up is Mrs. Crystal Cooper. Mrs. Crystal Cooper is joining us from the Mount Vernon Community School System, and Mrs. Cooper is the new principal at Dennis Middle School. Mrs. Cooper.
Hello. My name is Crystal Cooper. I am entering my 13th year of education, my 6th in administration. I did come from Mount Vernon Community Schools, from the middle school there as well. I've met some great parents today during registration, so that's been really fun to see the students and the parents and how excited they are to come in and start the school year. And I'm looking forward to building relationships with teachers, parents, students, because I think we all know middle school is a special time. So all of my education has been at the middle school level. So middle school is my jam. I like it. So, but thank you for being so welcoming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. Unfortunately, Mr. Grossman, who is the assistant principal there at Dennis, newly approved, could not be with us this evening, but Mr. Grossman will join us in a later board meeting. He too is a veteran educator out of Indianapolis by way of Warren Township, and he and his wife are originally from Batesville, Indiana, just southeast of here, and have already found a home. I believe they have two young, small, very small children, twins, if I'm not mistaken, that they're so looking forward to raising right here in Richmond, Indiana. And so he already has really acclimated himself very well. Next up is Mrs. Ashley Gerard. And if Mrs. Gerard could join us, she is going to be the new assistant principal at Test Intermediate. Mrs. Gerard, of course, is a veteran RCS educator. And so Mrs. Gerard, if you don't mind sharing a little bit and what you're most looking forward to.
So I'm starting, I believe, my 12th year with RCS, and it has been a great time. I started at Highland Heights and then was moved to Dennis to do 5th grade, and I had a wonderful time at Dennis, and the coaching position became open at Test, and I threw my name in the hat, and I got moved to Test, and I've been working at Test. This will be my 5th year at Test, and I absolutely love Test. I love our families. I was really excited when we redistrict and have all of the RCS students in the 5-6 building. I love that age group. I've been working with them forever. So I am really excited to step up and continue to serve our community and hopefully lead us into some great things.
And this past summer, Mrs. Gerard was able to work alongside even that many more youngsters there on the campus of IU East in teaching the science of reading. The Summer Reading Academy, which has been around for some time. And Mrs. Gerard, if I'm not mistaken, this was your
This is my 3rd year, and this was the best year. IU East was an amazing partner for us, and our students really did a great job. So I hope that continues.
Appreciate you.
We do too.
Next up is new leadership here at the central office level. And the first new central office leader is someone that you all may indeed recognize. She also is RHS grad and alum of Richmond Community Schools. And her name is Mrs. Elizabeth Markwood. Mrs. Markwood, if you don't mind, join us to share in your new role as Director of Exceptional Student Education.
Yes, thank you for having me this evening. I'm excited to start my 18th year with RCS as the Director of Exceptional Education. And I'm really excited to get to meet the staff, teachers, and support staff members that work in the many departments that kind of fall under the umbrella of my position. So that's what I'm most excited about this year.
And Mrs. Margaret, again, as I mentioned, precedes Mrs. Eloriaga there at Crestel, where she was, and as we have observed and experienced, just a tremendous educator and tremendous leader. And of the unique community of students there at Crestel, the service and compassion you all show is definitely a legacy that I know Mrs. Eloriaga will build upon. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Our next central office leader is Mr. Brent Baker, who comes to us from Shelbyville Schools. And Mr. Baker will be serving as our new Director of Student Achievement. Mr. Baker.
Good evening. I'm Brent Baker. I was born and raised in Wabash, Indiana. I have a wife and wife Allison, 2 boys, 14-year-old Brody and 9-year-old Bryson. I've spent my last, this will be my 14th year as an administrator. I've been a middle school administrator, and then 8 years as an elementary principal, and then the last 3 years as a high school principal. And I am excited to be here to work with people in this room, to work with you guys, and to make the education here at Richmond Community Schools first class and what's best for our students. So I am super excited to be here, and I'm ready to go. I've been working for about a week and a half now, and I've loved every day of it.
Mr. Baker also, not to steal any of his thunder, but is definitely, I think, as is said, he nerds out when it comes to data and data mining. And one of the things that Mr. Baker was able to do while he served as a successful elementary school principal as well as high school principal is indeed build and grow students, those that are of the upper echelon when it comes to intelligence as to that particular time in their experience, as well as those that have areas of improvement. One of the things that Mr. Baker has done consistently is maintain sustainability when it comes to performance. And of Mr. Baker's references, they were tickled to death that Mr. Baker now is in a position to have an impact on so many more students than just those in his previous building. So we welcome you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Mrs. Jamie Bolzer. Mrs. Bolzer comes to us from Northwestern School Corporation in Howard County, just I think west of Kokomo, if I'm not mistaken, it may be east. But nevertheless, Mrs. Bolzer comes to us as a very experienced professional that also has moved it down. So, Mrs. Bolzer, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you're also most looking forward to in your role as Chief Human Resources Officer.
First, thank you for having me, to the board and to the staff and to the community. I'm certainly looking forward to working with each of you, and I'm excited about the possibilities here at Richmond Community Schools. My husband and I are, in fact, we got back last night at midnight from making another trip. We're still trying to finish moving here, and we're trying to do so around our already busy schedules here. So to say I hit the ground running is possibly a little bit of an understatement. I feel like I'm sprinting a marathon at the moment as we're still trying to transition over, but I have a little bit more time on Mr. Baker. I completed my second week here, but you know, I'm looking forward to the possibilities. I'm also a very data-driven person and center decisions around what's best for students and our staff, and I'm looking forward to fully embedding myself into our community here at Richmond Community Schools, but also the community. I'm a very community-driven person. I have 20 years of various administrative and leadership roles where I come from. I was born and raised and never have left, really, Kokomo and Howard County. And so this is a new experience as I have personally become an empty nester and sending my youngest off to college this year. So, you know, I'm looking forward to the transition to a new school and a new community, and to fully embed myself in the community here in the school. And I'm looking forward to tackling the challenges ahead of me.
Welcome, Mrs. Bolzer. And the final new, well, rather experienced, not as new, central office leader that we want to introduce and highlight is Mrs. Dawn Sansini, who now serves our community school corporation as our new assistant superintendent. Mrs. Sansini, again, is a RHS and RCS alum, and thus far, Mrs. Sansini indeed has continued to build upon the legacy of those that have served in the role before her. And so, Mrs. Sansini.
Thank you, Dr. Wright and board. I'm very honored to be in this position and continue to serve. I was just reflecting, this is my third year back at Richmond and my third different position. So it's humbling in that you continue to learn, but what I'm most excited about is the people. Having our leadership team in place and really continuing to serve our students and families in the best ways possible. So I was reflecting also on Mrs. Jordan's comment. She was a Garrison Test and Richmond High School product, and I too went to Garrison Test and Richmond High School. So I have a lot of pride in our community and our school system, and look forward to continuing to grow what we have here.
Thank you, Mrs. Sansini. President Weber, trustees again of the new building level as well as central office level leaders that we currently have in place, along with the amazingly talented faculty and staff that is here at RCS and those that have yet to arrive. Again, I am confident and optimistic that we'll continue, as I said, to build upon legacies that have been established before us and continue to move to that next level of excellence. I know that in speaking with each and every person that was introduced, as well as others that have yet to be introduced, the one thing that continues to reign through their outlook to Richmond Community Schools is resiliency and being willing to selflessly serve. And as one then candidate, now employee mentioned, they just really love to come in and run to challenges, as they mentioned, opportunities. So we are extremely excited with what's before us. And so,
If you're Officer Stevens, okay.
Yeah, sorry, sir. Mr. Stevens.
First of all, from my heart, I would like to, congratulate everyone who has stepped up to take leadership roles in our corporation. And with respect to you, Ms. Bolzer, I would also think that we as a board should also give special recognition and notice and thanks to Ms. Alicia Stewart for, her work over the last number of months and stepping up and coming, so to speak, back to us out of retirement to fill that position and do that job. So as you step into it and she moves away from it again, I just think we should thank her for all the work that she's done.
Mr. Stevens, one thing that I have come to understand and know sometimes the hard way is that Mrs. Stewart is one that indeed enjoys her selfless service in the behind the scenes of matters. However, I indeed still am going to acknowledge during my bell ringer, it's not that I'm not going to allow Mr. Stevens to steal my thunder, but without a doubt, as Mr. Stevens mentioned, Mrs. Stewart has done a tremendous job, and we are forever grateful and just again overjoyed with her ability to stay with us, and more importantly, bring her metaphoric jersey out of the rafters and go back into the game to serve alongside us and to better the district for our students and our faculty.
I'll make sure I check with you the next time.
You're good. No, you're good. I love it. That's what it's all about. No doubt.
Well, I wish I was a better orator, but I'd like to thank you all. I mean, the team Dr. Wright's put together, I'm super impressed by your resumes. I mean, we have work to do, and you all know that, and you all came, and I think we are ready to build and move forward, and I'm so appreciative of each and every one of you. And I know I haven't met everyone, but I will try to get around and meet everyone sooner rather than later. But thank you so much.
I don't know, all I heard was Dr. Wright calling Mrs. Sonsini old. That's all I
Officer Stevens.
Yeah, I may have used the term better.
All right. Moving along to
congratulations to everybody. Good luck.
Anyone else has anything else they'd like to say?
Nicole?
Yes, I just wanted to say I'm excited to meet all of them. So please pass that on.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Moving on to data presentation. Dr. Wright.
Yes, sir. President Weber, trustees, as our audience shifts and adjusts.
Welcome to be excused.
Thank you.
Mrs. Stewart, not you. Not
see that.
That's
smooth. Yeah, you see how smooth. I love it. It's okay. President Weber, trustees, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Don Sonsini, our Assistant Superintendent, come before us with a brief presentation looking at the work that she has already gotten underway with, along with so many others throughout our district. And Mrs. Sonsini is going to provide us with direction, if you will, with regard to the next steps that will be taken. So, Mrs. Sonsini, I know that.
Just 1 minute to get set up.
Yep.
Can we reset to slide 1? And do you want me operating from up here, or are you gonna, just the space bar?
Space bar or the right arrow.
Okay. All right, I was just reflecting on the last time I presented data to you in my role as Director of Student Achievement, and that was in December of 2021. At that time, I shared with you NWA data and common formative assessments. This look this evening is different. This is student achievement data for K through 8. It is trend data, and we are looking at the last 8 years worth of iLearn or iStep testing. Just a reminder, we look at performance and we also look at growth. Right now, this snapshot is just performance at each grade level. So I do want to keep in mind that we have many celebrations in terms of growth of students. This is just looking at performance of our students at each grade level compared to our state average. I must give credit to Mr. Sam Thomas. He is not here this evening, but he has tracked data for our district for many years. It's not always been in the forefront in terms of communicating that to our board and also our community. However, it has been there. And so in working with him in the last week to pull this data, it wasn't starting from scratch. It was really just sitting down with him and allowing him to tell the story. I have to say that I admire that man. He shared with our team this week during training. He's been with the district 40 years. And he's seen many things come and go. But he is a learner. He's a field tester, a researcher. And so I do want to give credit to Sam for the work that he's done here and shared with us.
Class of 79.
Yes, of course. So what you're looking at is each slide will be a grade level snapshot. Again, this is iStep and iLearn data from the last 8 years. So in the top left-hand corner, you're seeing in blue the state average, and in red, you're seeing the average for that grade level. So for Richmond Community Schools, grade 3. So as you can see, in the first year when this data was being tracked, it was 2014, our state average in English Language Arts was 81%. Richmond Community Schools was 70%. Each year, you'll see that data and you'll see fluctuations of whether our scores are stabilizing, whether they're declining, or a term we use is recovering. Those terms have actually been used more recently with COVID, looking at data in the last 3 years. So to date, in English Language Arts, in grade 3, we had 41% was our state average. At Richmond Community Schools, we had 27% of our students proficient on the grade 3 assessment. On the right-hand side, you see the math data, again for grade 3. That first year in 2014, 80% was the state average. Richmond Community Schools was at 72%. You see a decrease in 2015, and then you work your way down. There is one change in 2019. That is when the transition from iStep to iLearn. So that was a new assessment, and that's worth taking note. We also had a new version of iStep in 2015. So those initial dips, sometimes we see when we have a new assessment, especially if we're not on the front end of what that new rigor looks like on that assessment tool. And then ending in 2022 with the most recent data, the state average in grade 3 was 52%. Richmond Community Schools was 42%. Next slide is grade 4. You can see that in English Language Arts, we were at 84% in 2014. We were at state average. And then to date, we are at 29%, and our state average is 41%. In math, when the data began to be tracked, we were at the state average was at 83% for grade 4. We were at 74%. To date, in 2022, this most recent iLearn, 48% passing at the state level, and Richmond Community Schools had 37% passing. This was grade 4. So this would have been the combination of all data from all of our elementary schools and students that students that were in those grades. The next slide is grade 5. I will note that This is both test and dentist data until the last 2 years with the reconfiguration. So in 2014, in grade 5, well actually, and some of those grades would have been at our elementary schools, I believe, so I should not have said that. 86% was the state average in grade 5 in 2014. We were at 81%. You can see we had a pretty drastic drop in 2015 in English language arts. We recovered in 2016, and then we've seen a steady decline to 2019. Now since COVID, we've seen a decrease, and then we've seen to start to stabilize and recover from that learning loss. And that's in 2022, we had a 23% passing rate, and the state average was 41%. In math, you can see one of our highest percentages was in 2014. The state average was 89%, we were at 83%. Again, a drastic drop in 2015. Then we started to recover through 2018, then saw another drastic drop when the test changed in 2019, and then again on that mending. Currently, to date, in grade 5, we have 16% of our students that are passing the math portion of iLearn. The state average is 41%. Grade 6, again, I'm giving you the beginning and ending snapshots there. 82% is the state average in English language arts in grade 6. We were at 73%, that's in 2014. In 2022, the state average was at 39%, and we were at 17%. Our math performance, again, high at this level to start in 2014, 85% with the state average. Our Richmond Community Schools average in grade 6 was 76%. Another drastic drop in that test change in 2015. We currently in grade 6 for Richmond Community Schools have an average of 10% students passing in the math portion. The state average is 36%. In grade 7, I apologize, those percentages got cut off, but they are nearing 80% as a starting point in 2014 on the iStep. To date, iLearn, we are at 23% passing in 7th grade ELA, and 42% is the state average. Our math trend data, we were at 80%, or excuse me, the state average was at 80% for grade 7. We were at 75% in 2014. We are now at 9% passing in grade 7 on the iLearn math portion. The state average is at 32%. And the last slide for iLearn data is, again, this is grade 8 for English language arts. We were between 75 and 80% in 2014. We are now at 23% on iLearn. The state average is 43%. And in math, this past year, we were at 7% passing the iLearn portion, and the state average was 30%. The next slide I'll pause there. So the data that I just shared with you was the last 8 years. It was performance-based only. We saw in those slides some areas where we saw some drastic decline with the change of an assessment tool. We started to see some recovery and some increases, but we also saw some decreases again. So continuing to monitor that long-term or that long trend data allows us to know where we've been and where we're going. Does anyone have any questions or just any analysis or thought about what you've seen in that data for grades 3 through 8?
There's an obvious trend downward, not just from local, but from statewide. Are there any indicators from the state as to why things are happening the way they are? Or are we getting any feedback from the state?
Well, when we have teachers present, I'm sure they would share too. With some of the assessment changes, the rigor of the questions and what we're expecting students to do has been more difficult. And so what we try to do is be on the front end of that during those transitions to prepare teachers. And the best way of doing that is really getting teachers together in grade level team meetings, looking at the data, being very vulnerable and saying what's working in my classrooms, breaking it down by like grading periods to do common formative assessments. So some of the things that we've put in action in the last 2 years in the K-4 model, curriculum mapping and CFAs through EdSite have been ways to kind of provide snapshots of the data leading up to this. But I can tell you in the curriculum mapping work that we're doing, and we're doing it currently at TEST with both Dennis and test teachers in grades 5 through 8 for English Language Arts. Cynthia Kirk is facilitating that work along with the principals and a few instructional coaches. The conversation around standards, the depth of what a standard is asking, breaking it down. So as standards change, if we're not constantly engaged in that conversation and really reflecting, sometimes we know that our students come in at lower levels. And so being able to teach the standards at the level at which the state is requiring versus knowing that students are coming in lower to us and lowering our expectations. And so that's something we've continued to use the analogy of playing in our own sandbox. It may be hard that we recognize that some kids may not be at that level to perform or to demonstrate mastery of a standard, but we still provide instruction at that level and scaffold so that students have supports to be successful. So I do think the change in assessment, but I do think bringing teachers together more regularly, having conversation, breaking it down what's working. There's not one single thing that will increase every score, but we know that allowing time for teacher collaboration has one of the greatest impacts, as well as a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And you'll see that on one of my ending slides. We know that that has one of the greatest impacts on student achievement. A guaranteed and viable curriculum. A guaranteed curriculum that every student has access to the rigor of the standards. Viable, the time is set aside in the curriculum every single day for students to have access to that content.
If I may ask, is there anything that we can point to in 2015 that led to the drastic drop?
I believe that was the second year's worth of data. That was the revised iStep Plus.
Okay.
So we had iStep in 2014. I believe
And then
it was
iStep
Plus in 2015.
Okay.
And when we saw that drop again, it was in 2019, which was the first year of iLearn.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've had COVID.
Okay. Because it was a consistent drop off on all your slides, and so I just wanted to see if there was something specific that we need to know or the public needs to know as to why there was a significant decline. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
The NIET that we've been talking about, does that lead into some of the things that you've been talking about, collaboration, looking at analyzing data?
Yes, it does. Let me pull up this slide. So we talked about the guaranteed and viable curriculum, and when we talk about guaranteed and viable curriculum, we talk about curriculum maps, we talk about common formative assessments, but the next piece is that common language when we're talking about best practices. And so what we're doing with the NIET implementation is using their instructional framework to say, this is the best practice. We don't have to guess and assume, but these are the practices that we know will have the greatest impact on student achievement. So that's the first piece. The second piece of the NIET work is the cluster model. And so right now in our elementary buildings, they meet in the mornings from 7:15 to 7:45. And I think some of you have attended those PLC meetings. What cluster does is it brings an emphasis on student work and the data into that conversation on a regular basis. And so teachers are talking about data, they're taking their field testing, going back into the classroom, trying different strategies, bringing the data back. So it's constantly a work in progress to see what is really impacting student achievement. Our administrative team and instructional coaches the last 2 days, so Monday and Tuesday, participated in cluster training. So Jen Oliver from NIET was here with them, walked them through the step. What was really exciting about that work is I feel like we're trying to get ahead of just planning PD on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis at times. If you can imagine, there are a lot of things on a principal's mind and an instructional coach, but we're trying to come up with long-term plans for that cluster. And so cycles of PLCs or clusters that will produce results. So within a given 4 to 6 weeks, you may be focused on this specific goal during cluster. One of the best pieces of evidence that we have for that work was at Fairview at the end of the school year. They did a cluster cycle on writing, and their teachers would share that during those cluster meetings, they were developing rubrics. They were increasing student accountability and even agency because they were helping develop the rubrics. They were talking with students about how do I score this in writing. It was in combination with the seconds work that was being done, but they finally saw like how cluster was impacting student achievement in that building. It took trial and error of cluster and trying to map things out and not feeling just 1 week at a time, but by the end, the teachers were saying that they saw the impact of cluster at Fairview. So we do see that. And then the next 2 days, tomorrow and Friday, here at Central Office, our building principals and instructional coaches will be back for in the ILT training with NIET, which is the instructional leadership team. And it's kind of a smaller subgroup under the school improvement team, but what we really love about that ILT model is it brings in teacher voice. So that not only are the principal and instructional coach looking at school improvement goals and planning for professional development, but we also have teacher leaders in that building that are saying, this is what we see from our perspective. So I'm not an instructional coach, but I'm a third grade teacher, and here's what I'm seeing, and I want to help contribute to this professional development. I think we've had that sometimes in our buildings, but sometimes we haven't had just teacher input in professional development. So I think that ILT model will really support that.
Erin, can I say something?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Dawn, I want to just say when Kristen and I went to visit Fairview and got to see that in action, the PLC meeting or the cluster meeting, it was very impressive to see the teachers that were teaching the same grade collaborating at the beginning of the day and saying, this is my plan, what's your plan, this is what worked for me, what's worked for you. It was exactly what you are describing, and it really was, as a former teacher, it was very invigorating and inspiring to think, okay, I would love to have this time carved out to do exactly this. So I just want to applaud those efforts because it was impressive to see that firsthand.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think sometimes when we think PLC, there's this idea of, okay, it's just teachers in a room and we're talking about anything from field trip planning to what we're teaching next in a lesson, but this is very intentional work with student work being the center. So every week, teachers are bringing back student work to say, this is the evidence that we have that students are learning. It's not just me saying I can teach and that I've taught content, but it's student work coming back to say, this is the evidence that students are mastering the content.
Right, yeah. So thank you. Just wanted to say I was impressed with what I saw.
And just to add to that, I did mention the elementary model, but at our middle school and intermediate school, we are adding that cluster time. So I just want to applaud Mr. Graber actually went through that process with his team at Dennis to create the master schedule to allow for cluster time. And then Mrs. Thomas also has worked with her team to figure out a way that we can provide more time to each content versus an entire staff. So if you can imagine 30 minutes on a Tuesday with every content teacher, you really can't differentiate to each content team. And so their models of what they're taking a risk, they're doing something different at both Test and Dennis this year. It may work, it may not, but they're trying something different to better meet the needs of the teachers and to have that, for them to have that audience. So to have all English teachers together for 30 minutes to have this conversation versus everyone being in a staff meeting and trying to cater to English, math, science, social studies, creative arts, and so forth. So in honor of time, I'm going to move forward. This is just a snapshot of this year's data. So this is different. This is grade 3 ELA for each of our elementary schools as well as a total. So just, I didn't put percentages up here, but you can just see by the color coding, there are 4 categories on iLearn: above proficiency, at proficiency, approaching proficiency, and below proficiency. That's grade 3 ELA for this school year. This is grade 4 for iLearn for this school year. This is grade 3 math for 2022. This is grade 4 math. This is a snapshot of grades 5 through 8. This is ELA iLearn performance from this school year. This is a snapshot of grades 5 through 8 in math for iLearn. And then I wanted to tie in the iLearn results summary just to kind of ground, because in the last few years with COVID, we've talked a lot about learning loss. How do we recover from this? So I thought not only should I share the data from our state and also local performance data, but also just the summary. So overall, most grade levels and student populations on 2022 iLearn had increases of 1 to 4% in math and ELA. 41.2% of Indiana students statewide are at or above proficiency standards in English language arts. 39.4% of students are at or above proficiency standards in math. And again, spring 2022 proficiency in math increased 2 to 4% across all grade levels. Proficiency in ELA increased 1 to 2% in all grade levels, except grades 6 and 8, which decreased 1%. About 15,000 additional students achieved at proficiency or above proficiency in math, increasing overall by 3%, and about 5,500 additional students achieved above proficiency in ELA compared to 2021, demonstrating that high-performing students are making progress. So we talk academic recovery, and a recent study said that Indiana students have stabilized and are generally returning to normal rates of learning. So I thought this was important for you to know, what should we expect? Because we've talked a lot about COVID. Are we asking too much of our students and staff with looking at this data? But it's showing that students are not regressing further, but in some grade levels, content areas or student population, students have not accelerated to the rate needed to recover to pre-pandemic performance. And they have seen higher rates of recovery in math than English language arts. So I use those terms, recovering, stabilizing, or declining, but I think that's a nice way of looking at that trend data, especially over 8 years worth of time. And then this is the state study. So this is saying in grade 4, in ELA, as a state, we're stabilizing or recovering. So just kind of take a snapshot of that. Grade 6, the state is seeing stabilizing to declining in ELA.
Dawn, top right corner, the recovering, is there a very light colored?
Oh yes.
There is a light colored
There is a
yellow
light
that's going
green arrow there.
upward, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if
It's really difficult to see. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Because it almost looks like there's only 2 in that one. I was
very difficult.
So recovering, obviously you're going to see an arrow going up.
Upward,
Stabilizing
yeah.
is just straight across and then declining. And then what are the next steps? So Kristen, you actually kind of led me into some of these things. As we mentioned, Guarantee and Bible curriculum, we have to stay committed to that work. And again, at the end of this week, I'm proud to say that we will have K through 8 ELA curriculum maps in place. And that is a lot of work. Our elementary curriculum maps were revised this spring with input from our teachers. And so we are super excited to be launching year 2 of those. Common formative assessments have also been revised with teacher input. The middle level curriculum maps, this will be the first year, so we'll have to live and learn and make tweaks at the end of the year. We'll also have common formative assessments. The one exception is math. So this year we have a new math curriculum implementation. We have Ready Math in grades K through 8, and then we have Reveal at the high school, and then we have an honors track of CPM starting in at Hibbert, that will move through the high school. And so it's really important, and I know I'll be working with Brent and our leadership team to make sure that all of our teachers have all the resources they need and training to launch. For Ready Math, which is the K-8, there will be 3 on-site visits from our reps for training, and we already have those dates set. So we are ready to launch with that. We'll also be looking at data differently with Ready Math. We're going to be using iReady, which is a diagnostic tool that checks mastery of standards versus NWA with a RIT score. So that's something to keep in mind. But I also put up here Indiana's priorities for early literacy and Indiana's priorities for STEM. We've been doing a lot of research around the science of reading. A lot of our schools are wanting to pilot things. All that work comes around phonics and phonemic awareness. And then the state put out something called Standards in Need of Essential Support. So basically they looked at all of the iLearn data and said, what standards are in most, which standards need to be hit hardest by our schools across Indiana. So you can take that data, but then you can also take it one step further and compare that versus our curriculum maps to see, are they aligned, are they different standards? So we're in the process of doing that with our schools and our leadership team. We talked about the K-8 implementation, and I think the last thing, and almost most important, and I know this, I say this a lot, but having high expectations, and just the Pygmalion research, if you're familiar with that, and the effect of our impact on student learning and efficacy. It's our own self-efficacy and whether we believe we can impact every single student in every classroom, regardless of anything that they bring with them, any factor. It's setting high expectations. It's providing curriculum at the richest level and scaffolding instruction. It's hard work. No doubt it's hard work. It's a craft, but we're all committed to that. And then the last piece I mentioned is Hattie's Mind Frames. John Hattie is a researcher guru in education, and one of the trainings we just talked about during NIT was the evaluator of impact on student learning, that we know we cause learning, that we have that impact. And not only does a teacher have that impact, building leaders have that impact, and as a district leader, we have to say we have that impact. So again, snapshot of where we've been in the last 8 years, and where we're going. Performance is not the only piece that we look at. We do look at growth, but I do think this sends a message that there is a sense of urgency for us to rally behind the work of teachers coming together in grade level meetings, PLCs, clusters, and really looking at student work as evidence to determine our impact on instruction.
With a lot of reticence, as an attorney, I ask a question about education and educational measurement and performance, but after 40-some years, you and your predecessors have a little bit of soaked in. Is there a problem identifying, particularly if you look at the linear graphs, a given class, let's say this year's 5th grade class, and seeing that there may be issues with that, and then focusing on those and expecting that there to be valid conclusions that can be drawn from their performance next year as 6th graders. Stated another way, do we have such a mobility factor in this district that the ability to isolate a cohort in a grade level is challenged, if not nearly impossible?
I would say yes, that would factor in. But one thing that we're trying to do to counter that is that curriculum map and making sure that we're providing the same pace of instruction across all of our elementary schools. So whether you're at Charles, whether you go to Cresta, whether you go to Fairview, in a 6-week given time frame, these are the high priority standards that you're mastering. So what we should find, if we're implementing that with full fidelity, that we should see that be the same at each. We should find a hole in the curriculum map at that grade level.
That ought to blend out the differences.
Yes.
From building to building.
But I don't think we're there yet. And that also brings up another point worth mentioning is you are looking at different cohorts of kids each year. And that has, the range of the students in that one given class and their abilities, but that's where also that growth piece. And again, we do have some celebrations with growth, but ultimately we're trying to reach this state average.
So having sat on the board for the majority of this chart, our system, we are producing, 2/3 of state average. That's what the system we've had has produced. Over those 8 years, we've been at what? Or 3/4. It's just not acceptable. And so I know we're the curriculum and NIET. What other systematic approaches are we doing? Because the system we have, I mean, that's why we ask people to be our partners to help to be the change, because it's not acceptable. And I've been on this board for 6 years, and I have no one to blame but myself for not being more upset. But how are we going to be better?
Well,
I mean, what else do we need to do, I guess?
Well, and I think that kind of leads into my question is there's a lot of, we ask how we can support students so they can learn. Behavior has been a problem, and, other attendance. And so I'm sure we had talked about more counselors. We had talked about, more kids involved to support the students, because not only are we going to be asking our staff to do more, but at the same time, we also need to be asking our parents to do more, or we need to be asking the system to do more. So, I mean, are there some things that are working in parallel to? I mean, that's one of the things I like about on the presentation with the NIET. It doesn't seem like we should go in that order, but I like the idea that the whole focus of that was pulling the teachers together to support the teachers, to help them, not as a got you, but as a support tool. As here's best practice here, or here's things that you might try, or that type of stuff. But I mean, I think it even goes beyond that. So I agree with John. I mean, at 7%, 9%, I'm not even happy at state average. I mean, realistically, I go back years ago, and when the No Child Behind Act came about, here we're talking 10%, 20%, and we want to get to 40%. Well, they wanted everybody at 100%. So I mean, part of our goal should be 80% or 70% or something like that. I know there's a whole bunch of different arguments about setting the goal so high you can't obtain it, and people lose interest and all that kind of stuff. But we surely have got to have our goal higher than 10%.
and to soften that, and we've been aware of the numbers for some time, and we've been working the whole time. But what else? I guess that's what else do we need to do as a board?
It's really
to support you, to support the teachers, to support the system, so the system can change to a system that produces success rather than 70% or 65% of the state average.
right, and it's not the programs, it's the people. And so investing in the people, in the mindsets, to again say that collectively we can do this. One of the things that I walked away from the Summer Institute from NIET in Scottsdale was this idea of proving with data to improving. So when I walk into a meeting, I'm not proving to Mr. Walton that my kids know this. It's bringing the data to say, how can we improve instruction? And so again, I think it's a mindset that we're not out to get you. It's just having some real conversations about where our students are. Now, those conversations, they are happening, but the student work piece, bringing into the conversation, not just saying I'm delivering this curriculum, this is what I taught today, but how do I know kids learned it? And for me, if a majority of my kids don't get it, how do I change my teaching the next day to impact and get a different result? So those are the questions that we're constantly asking. I think also a mindset that, all students, it's not, we have different tiers of support, but that I can impact all students in my classroom, whether they're special ed, whether they're EL, like I own that instruction as the primary teacher in that classroom, but also continuing to equip our teachers with tier 2 intervention and structure or in strategies to help those students in that classroom. So to answer your question, I think we have to rally behind the work, and because this data looks like it is, even at the district level, we want support, and that's what NIET is providing, not only to our building leaders to support our teachers to impact student learning, but also our district leaders to say, what can we do better to sustain systems that are going to produce better results?
Well, I think that goes to what we can do to the best of our ability is provide. I think our effort needs to be to provide some stability, because that can't happen when we're rotating 3 new teachers in every year in every building, right? So providing that stability and making that what we've said our goal has been, and clearly we haven't achieved that, but doing what we can do to make this the attractive place to be, to say we're here, we're supporting you, we want to pay you well, we want you to feel valued. I think that's the big piece that I think we have to figure out how we can do better.
And Mr. Moore, we actually have already started upon such a quest. And one of the things that we'll do over the next several board meetings, as well as with regard to the public service announcements that we have made and the information that we're sharing transparently moving forward with our community, is the fact that trend data, whether it be in our Department of Student Achievement, whether it be in our Human Resource Department, looking at business finance, looking at all of the facets that make up our corporation, we are definitely trying to understand exactly how we got here and what steps indeed need to be taken as we move forward. And one of the things that I'll allude to here in due time is the fact that as a board of trustees, you all have identified some of these same challenges years ago. And prior to my arrival, you all had already started to actually address some of these challenges. And this, as was stated, sense of urgency. And so, but most importantly, as what Mrs. Sanzini referenced, as what you're alluding to, it definitely starts with people and valuing the fact that the most important people within our classrooms are our instructional practitioners, our classroom teachers. And so I'll allude to that a little later, but other questions for Mrs. Sanzini?
Yes. Okay, other components that you've discussed, we know the efforts of our instructional leaders in the classroom and the students. What more can we do for the parent? Because I think that's a key component that has a direct positive or negative effect on that. And I'm not going to go into the long speech on that, but is there anything more that we can do from this vantage point to aid those parents to help their student be prepared for that classroom? Because I think that's one of the biggest pieces of ammunition, pardon the expression, that we can give a teacher.
Mm-hmm. And I think that starts with just communication of what is my child learning in a kindergarten classroom. Help me understand in this week what kind of expectations do you have. And so maybe we could revisit what are we communicating to families. I'm not sure what that looks like, but we could definitely audit that. We do have tools in place, Dreambox, Lexi at the elementary level, other things that our families can log into of an evening to support the students and work at their own individual pace. But I would definitely be open to other ideas that the board may have.
One of the things, Mr. Stevens, almost at officer again, but one of the things, Mr. Stevens, that really speaks to your question, and as Mrs. Sanzini referenced, if indeed we can educate and teach our parents exactly which questions that they should be asking as they move along their students' journey and course throughout our school corporation. When parents are, as we all understand and know, when they're informed and involved, we see the results play out with increased levels of student achievement. So one of the things that I have found success in my previous stints in education is the fact that when you can find peers, in other words, parents that are willing indeed to share some of those trade secrets that they have utilized or have been utilized in past practice to help their fellow parental core, then typically, because again, as we know, peer-to-peer leadership is huge, but one of the things that we is a parent panel. And one of the things that we'll look to explore is finding those parents, and we have been within our city. That's the beauty with our county and within our city, is that so many folks are willing to step up and give back and jump in the hunt, per se. But finding those parents that have had success within our corporation, have had success within their own students, and provide them with a forum to share such best practices, as well as from a school corporation standpoint, just providing them with as much correspondence, as much dialogue, communication as we can. Because as Mr. Weber mentioned, we definitely indeed are in search of partners as we move through this. And we have some already within our classrooms, within our community. We're just trying to build upon it. I'm sorry, Mr. Moore. Oh, I thought I saw you. I'm sorry.
So I had a question / clarification. Am I being heard right now?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the high expectations is not only the students, not only the teachers, but there are high expectations of the parents as well. Is that what you're saying, Dr. Wright?
With regard to our high expectations for parents, what I would prefer is that we provide our parents with as many supports so as to assist them in their navigating of providing direction for their students and their children. As far as expectations that we may have of parents, one of the things that we understand and know is that that's outside of our sphere of control, and even Hattie, as well as what we have been undergoing with the NIET training as building level and central office leaders, is the fact that we cannot, as was said by Hattie, we cannot allow for variables outside of our control to weigh in on how
curriculum, we have engaged students, we have active parents. Does our current system get 100% scores? You know, I mean, if everything runs right, does our system perform at 100%?
I think that's that's maximizing, yes.
Okay.
That would be at the highest performing
Yeah.
level. So how do we get there? And so I think strategically you look at, okay, we want to continue to see these increases and we want to be able to factor this increase is the result of this. So in Fairview saw some of those increases in 3rd and 4th grade data, and we correlated that to the work that they were doing in cluster, specifically with writing and SMECANs for language arts and for math specific to number routines and things that they were implementing as a result of meeting on a weekly basis and having intentional conversations about specific content. I can't guarantee that you're gonna be at 100% next year, but I think what we can hold ourselves accountable for is sharing this data that I just shared with all of you, with our building principals, and saying collectively, as a Charles team, as a Fairview team, we know we can grow, and we're gonna work on not only the growth piece we'll produce, but we're gonna have to grow by leaps and bounds to be able to get to the performance piece. And so that's going to take time. You're not gonna see the performance go drastically up to state average in 1 year. But what we do want to see is we want to provide supports to schools that aren't showing that, but also celebrate and share what's working in those schools that are seeing the increase.
Well, and to go back to Dr. I think we are, and I've heard enough of what's coming down the pike and what we would like to do, that we are controlling and putting the things in that we have, but those other pieces, you know, I mean, the parental involvement piece. You know, maybe that's untapped resources, the student piece, engagement. I mean, you know, what can part of the thing with the STEM program or the STEAM program is, to me, that lights a fire for student engagement and interest.
Right.
And which then is educational efficiency.
Sort of kind.
But, you know, I want to make sure we have the right system in place, and then that we're working on all the pieces, not just those that we can control, if that makes sense.
And it's not just, I think Mr. Morey hit an extremely important point with turnover. The cost of turnover is great. And right now, we have to recover from that as well. So as much of curriculum and things that we have in place, we have many new leaders in our buildings that are in the process of finishing degrees, that are learning the ropes. And so turnover does cost. And so that's something that we're excited about the new team, but we have to continue to provide, be very intentional about the support and how do we break up these tasks and chunk them so that we don't overwhelm them.
And just to piggyback on Mrs. Sonsini's last statement with regard to turnover, thus is why it is that we are indeed investigating and looking at trend data and trying to quote unquote level set in several of our departments, because one of the things that has been understood and known and data proves is that we have had turnover for years in this district, whether it be classroom educators, building level leaders. And as we know right now, we have a plethora of students that lay their head down in Richmond but wake up to go to schools around the surrounding county. And so of such turnover, when you have it multifaceted, it makes it that much more difficult to indeed find alignment or move in the same direction and be on that same sheet of music. And again, not to kick the dead horse, but you all have, as a board of governance, as our central office leaders of past, building level leaders of past, and current teachers, you all have identified that indeed there is room for improvement, room for growth. Most importantly, at the same time, I'd be remiss to say that we also have had victories throughout. And I think that as we continue to have victories, no matter how large or small, we celebrate those. But one thing's for sure is that, and as I'll transition into my brief presentation, I promise, we are going to just simply go down a brief historical road as to, again, how we've gotten here and help us all understand.
Before you start,
it may take some time. Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever, you can
No,
go.
I just want to thank Mrs. Hunseat. I'm super
absolutely.
appreciative of the information. I'm super excited with the new staff. I mean, I don't want to come across as a, downer, because it's I get excited when I see that data, and it just because we've got to do better. But the work you're doing is what we need to do, and so I appreciate that immensely.
Thank you. And one other thing just worth noting with NIET is that teacher career ladder. So we do have people that are leaving for other leadership roles, and so trying to figure out a way to grow our own teachers into teacher mentors, mentors into instructional coaches into principals into district leaders. We have some of that already happening, but that's something else that districts that partner with NIET, there is research that shows that there is increased satisfaction among their staff with those different opportunities. I also just left up on the screen so that you or anyone in the community can always look at data. If you go on our school website under the information tab and you scroll to school report, it's going to take you to the InView website. There are some changes with the DOE. That platform may change, but for right now, I was going to click that at the top, but that's the RCS data, and it would take you directly to our district page on InView, and then you can search Richmond or you can search any school. So if you wanted to compare to schools similar in our size, you could, but that's somewhere that the public can always go to access data for Richmond and for all schools in Indiana.
I just wanted to say that I'm seeing the data, I guess I wanted to verbally say, I mean, as a former teacher too, that the data isn't reflective of necessarily the teachers in Richmond. Like, I've been in the classrooms, I know lots of teachers, the teachers are working so hard and there's a lot of challenges. And so when we look at that data, I don't want the public or anyone to say, oh, I think it's, we're all taking responsibility and trying to figure out what is the solution. What are some things as, myself as a board member, we've talked about some things about stability and offering support and parents and mentors, but, our teachers that are in Richmond and visiting their classrooms this year, a lot of them, and just, there's so much effort and time that go into our kids, not just educating them, but, helping them emotionally and with their families, and there's so many facets to our students that I think we're having some good conversations around, but I just wanted to say that, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things, and I'll harp on it briefly with regard to NIT. One of their mottos is that as a board of governance, as central office leaders, as building level leaders, it's imperative that we go first, that we indeed model and put forth the efforts that indeed we are helping to foster and professional develop, but also that we expect. And so in that vein, as we transition into the next brief presentation, I simply wanted to again reference the fact that as a board of governance, you all have identified and recognized a need for improvement in particular areas. And so as As you have done so, there were actions that were taken by this Board of Governance several semesters ago in reaching out to a consultant for assistance and for support in moving the dial of student achievement. That consultant's name, Dr. Patrick Rice, has been working handily with our Board of Governance and with you all for some time now. Dr. Rice was unfortunately not able to be here this evening. He actually just got back from Korea, but he, as we know, has been working hand in hand over the course of time to try and identify and try to set goals that will indeed provide a beacon of light for our district. Dr. Rice has provided correspondence, and as he says, boards often initiate planning sessions for the purpose of articulating district ends, that is, values, beliefs, mission, vision, and or higher level district goals. It goes by many names, but whether you can call it setting district goals and or direction, strategic planning, or values and beliefs, missions, visions, goals, works, school boards are responsible for clarifying the district purpose. Dr. Rice, and I'm not going to engage in all of the correspondence he provided, but in short, what he had stated is that this board, back in June of 2020, started to indeed work to tackle the issues that have been identified and that you all have been aware of for some time. And so there in June of 2020, the school board discussed and created core value statements during a board meeting that included student and learning, teachers and learning, and school community relations. The school board discussed, modified, and reaffirmed the district's mission statement during a board meeting on June 18th, as Dr. Rice highlights. The new vision statement was adjusted by inserting the word collaborative. That's one of the things that you all as a Board of Governance found important as we move forward in bringing about change. The new vision statement will read that Richmond Community Schools is a collaborative community, nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service will be, again, that vision. Dr. Rice stated that, again, there was a chamber focus group in November of 2020, that there was a teacher focus group in November of 2020. There was a community focus group, consulting group in December of 2020, along with community surveys that were distributed to approximately 1,000 respondents, and that those surveys were given to teachers, parents, students, administration, as well as our community stakeholders between November and December of 2020. Dr. Rice goes on to state that the school board met on October 23rd of 2021 to discuss a tentative plan as to how the administrative team will implement district goals at the school level. And the superintendent was charged with creating a strategic plan to implement district priority areas. And so with regard to the PowerPoint, and if we can go back just to a few slides and we'll move through. One of the things that Dr. Rice and his consulting group provides school corporations and districts across the country is indeed assistance and encouragement so as to create the best model that our corporation can implement and put into practice. As we go on to the next slide, one of the things that Dr. Rice highlights is that, again, in a word or phrase, what is the role of the school board? And as I believe we have found, and as we know, oftentimes there may be confusion as to particular roles. And so I'm not going to oversaturate, but as we go to the next slide, Dr. Rice wants us to remember that as school boards, the role and the job is centered around organizational effectiveness and student achievement, governing the affairs of the school district, monitoring those objectives, setting the pace, setting the course of action. With the next slide, the superintendent's role. As we know, I am ideally you all's only employee, and as you all set that bar, set that standard, the charge that I have and of our school district faculty, staff, and officials is to oversee the day-to-day operations and make sure that, again, the organizational effectiveness as well as that student achievement is top priority. As manager of the school and the district, my goal is always to make sure that our faculty and staff have the resources. Mrs. Sonsini alluded to, and I'll stress as we go on the importance of being like that of executive producers and supporting our classroom teachers for the celebrities and stars that they are, to provide them with the supports and necessary resources. In regard to the next slide, as we know, as Dr. Rice has worked with us in establishing successful goal setting. Next slide, please. Setting district goals and direction, answering the question. Again, we asked ourselves, where is it that we want to go? Looking at data that you all have observed, that we've discussed this evening. The next slide will show that we found it important, and with indeed the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching, NIT, they provide such a framework that will allow us to provide alignment, not only with faculty, staff, students, stakeholders, but through and through, make sure that we are able to consolidate all of the best practices and all of the amazing things that are indeed occurring throughout our district, but as has been mentioned, have been occurring somewhat haphazardly. And with such a framework, with Dr. Rice's guidance, we've been able to establish a set of goals. So as we go through these next few slides, where are we now? Where do we want to go? We've had these conversations. Mrs. Sonsini has highlighted where we've been, highlighted opportunities that we have in the future. With the next slide, we'll understand and know, as we've discussed, the values, the mission, the vision, the goals, bringing it all together, finding those elements to an end. Core values and beliefs. Again, as we know and as we've been studying and exercising, the one area that I think is most important is to develop, not only within our students, but also within the faculty and staff, just having that intrinsic value, having it within, having that compassion and that drive to serve. And as it mentioned, as Dr. Rice states, the fundamental and deeply held, that the core values are seldom, if ever, changed. And so, next slide, please. Where do we want to go? Next slide. It shows that. One more. Thank you. With regard to the core values, on the 18th of June, back in 2020, these were the core values that our faculty, staff, students, and stakeholders, community members, felt were of importance. I'm not going to go through each bulleted item, but as you can see, regarding students and learning, the board, along with stakeholders, felt that this should indeed be, and these should indeed be our points of emphasis, teaching how to learn appropriately, being accountable, having a safe place to fail. That's one of the things that we know when indeed our faculty, staff, and students know that they can make mistakes without penalty. Oftentimes they have the confidence to grow, knowing that they're not going to be penalized or have a foot on their neck, per se. And then ultimately, as it shows, focusing on that individual student learning needs, trying to tailor make and differentiate for each individual learner. Next slide, please. Thank you, sir. Regarding teachers and learning, the core beliefs that were found back in 2020 is that teachers must enjoy and like children, which I don't think there is a question within this profession. If you do not have a innate love for kids, then it will show quite evidently, quite early. Role modeling, good expectations, as you all identified throughout several other bullets. Promoting school spirit and having a sense of ownership and pride in what we all do as educators. And then most importantly, as it says, supporting those teachers, whether it be through the social, emotional, and disciplinary data and or with competent professional development. Regarding school community relations, you all believed in 2020 that the community needs to feel listened to and able to provide feedback. Just to summarize such community relations. One of the things that, and I think you all have highlighted and stated, the point and the emphasis and the importance of providing current user-friendly and effective means of communication and channels in which our community can be heard, and that we indeed can interact and engage in meaningful dialogue. Next slide. Mission and vision statements, again, as we understand and know, those indeed set the standards, set the tone. Next slide, please, sir. And we can cycle through a little bit there. As far as where are we going on this journey? And so as you all met there in 2020 and revised mission and vision statements, and as we will usher such statements in, we then found that district goals and the level setting of goals was of most importance. Next slide. Here you'll find just a few of the goal areas that you identified: student achievement, pupil services, facilities, district finances, community relations, safety, and personnel. And so as we wrap up the presentation, again, just the fact that you all as a board set the bar, we as a district look to overcome, adapt, adjust, and overcome and meet such expectations and goals that you set. Next slide. Moving into community engagement, again, you all felt that community engagement, as also called public and civic engagement, is the process, as we know, in which we are actively engaging and interacting and providing, again, those channels of communication as well as opportunities for our stakeholders to be heard. Going back to what it is that has already been done to try and hear from the community back in November of 2020, along with December, such community engagement sessions were indeed provided. Faculty, staff, students, and stakeholders participated. Next slide. They then started to provide us with feedback as to what it is that they were most proud of. And as you can see there in the bulleted items, we again, as I mentioned, we have so many great things occurring and celebrations to be had. But then they also found that we have some areas of improvement. And so with the next slide, you'll see the challenges that our stakeholders found with Richmond Community Schools, and improving upon student learning and instruction, hiring and retaining staff, meeting the social and emotional needs of students, and then the collaborative relationships, which is why it is that as you all move through collaborative and the professional learning model is something that has been highly sought after. Next slide. From the survey, the skills that our community feels our students need to know, one of the most important is consumer and finance skills, so that as to be productive citizenry, not only here in Richmond, but also where they indeed will embark upon as they grow older. Computer and IT skills. We are a one-to-one district. However, when we look at the data as to student involvement, or I should say student participation with such devices and tools, we're not necessarily getting the same yield and the same results that we will strive to achieve with some of the technological advancements and actual luxuries that we have in the district. But mastery of core academics and communication skills are of importance. Final few features of the survey, issues facing students. Again, that was one of the things that Mrs. Stoltz had discussed, some of the questions that you all have had. As Mr. Weber mentioned, these are those variables that are a lot of times outside of our educators' control. But indeed, we know that within our beloved city, the economy has not been what it was. We understand and know that population is decreasing. As a result, student enrollment has decreased. We know that, unfortunately, there is substance abuse that has increased crime rate. Again, factors that, when push comes to shove, as Hattie and as we have discussed, cannot be like that of a crutch for we as educators, and instead we continue to press forward and press through and provide the necessary supports to see our students through such challenges. Last few slides here simply identify what it is that our community stated that they wanted. Highly qualified teachers. They want to provide our students with an opportunity to learn more vocational trades. We do still in our city have manufacturing plants and opportunities within vocational trade to establish and develop pipelines into business right here in Richmond. And then ultimately, smaller classrooms. Financial priorities, improving the pay scale. I know one of the things that Mrs. Bolzer and one of the things that Mrs. Stewart had referenced a few weeks ago is the fact that indeed there is indeed some opportunity. I think as was said during last fall's collective bargaining process, as has been said in years past, there's a commitment and as we all come to the table with some of the same interest-based initiatives, we have to work together and partner to improve upon the pay scale. Because as I've mentioned and as I said time and again, those outside of the education profession, well, I'll reserve my cynical response, but I know that our educators and educators across the country work extremely hard and sacrifice so much. And then retaining and investing in human capital, in other words, teachers. This is something that our community has stated that they indeed want us to focus on during 2020. Technological needs, again, this being several years old and knowing that technology moves weekly, at times monthly, we indeed have accomplished a lot of the aspects or survey results from our community. Our infrastructure and our technological capabilities have indeed improved and will continue to, as we have been fortunate. I think one of our speakers this evening that came to the podium recognized and referenced the fact that you all as a Board of Governors have indeed placed a lot of the federal funding and state funding in areas of need as well as of want from our community. I know from a technological standpoint, we definitely have some true luxuries. Final few slides here. Three things again, the stakeholders want to see our district do. Make sure that our students are college and career ready, enhance parental community engagement, and then ultimately increase the vocational opportunities. And I think we have just, with regard to community engagement again, and that's something that you don't ultimately find a lot of, and that is student input. Allowing students to have a forum to share their experience, allowing students to have a forum to provide their feedback as to how they are receiving the instruction. Civics and volunteerism, as Mr. Stevens had asked, is also something that our community indeed, again, wants to volunteer, help, and serve. Next slide. With regard to the goals, so as the work has been done, and I know you all as a Board of Governors have tried to share, I know that was a question that came up this evening as well, what does it take to be a board member, what type of time, what type of commitment. These are goals from a district level standpoint, from a district-wide standpoint. These are some of the goals that have been established and some of the goals that we will work to put in place. And so with regard to academic achievement, again, mastering core academics, vocational training. When it comes to personnel, becoming a professional learning organization. A lot of people use that word, and those have been buzzwords, $1 million buzzwords, but a PLO, professional learning organization, is more district oriented. A PLC, professional learning community, is more building based. And so all in all, it goes back to the collaborative model that you all have stated as a Board of Governors and our community has stated that we want to aspire to be. And again, with the NIT framework, going back to Mr. Weber's point, that's a framework that indeed will only enhance and improve upon that ability. Community relations, again, improving through and through. Overall, also improving upon our performing arts and also continue to support athletics with the STEAM initiative that is occurring and will continue to move forward within our district. as well as providing the necessary resources and equipment for our athletic programs to continue to shine. And then personnel, again, hiring and retaining diverse staff. The cultural awareness training, which last year we embarked upon with the partnership of our Richmond Education Association, who a few years ago took it upon themselves to take action and established a very successful coalition that is still ongoing today that we work in partnership with. And conducting equity audits, that's something that as we level set again, we're going to be asking questions as to how we've arrived at where we are and how we'll move forward. In consideration of attaining an equity office. I know that's been of discussion in past practice. Next slide. So again, next steps with our new central office leaders, with our building level leaders, with the folks that we have here on the dais. We indeed understand and know that our work is cut out for us. However, we indeed have, not only here at the district level, but also in each building, compasses or strategic goals that have been planned out. And as our new leaders transition in and get a chance to weigh in on what's been established, we then also, again, and that's one of the things that's important, is that we get the perspective and we see the input and bring to the table the classroom practitioners, those instructional classroom teachers, to share with us, again, their perspective as to what is and what is not working. Last slide is simply the fact that, again, making sure that we're on the same page, make sure we're on the same sheet of music. In closing, becoming a data-driven decision-making district, establishing that fabric of being able to review and look at data and not being fearful that the data is going to be used as a step toward termination, or, as has been mentioned, gotcha. Instead, utilizing the data to continue to move that out. Providing descriptive feedback, very important as we move through. But finally, with regard to NIET and Hattie, NIET has been proven to be successful in not only our corporation, but also corporations around the county, the state, and the country. Indeed, without a shadow of doubt, if we do not help our educators understand and thoroughly model and provide supports, then we will have an uphill challenge. However, of what I have seen, of what has been observed, the framework really provides and gives a voice to the most important person in the classroom, and that's the teacher. Seeing how indeed the educators have responded to the framework, and most importantly, seeing the confidence that they have been able to attain through the confidence that their students are attaining. And so, in closing, it still comes down to trust. One of the things that I heard last year upon coming in, and I understand it to be true, is that we had a schoolhouse here within the district that at one point was not performing up to par, performing at a very low level, but in 1 year made a drastic change. And of what I understand, that change started internally and innately within classroom educators. And as Mrs. Sonsini alluded to, the power that our classroom teachers have to bring upon such a vision is something that we have to foster, sustain, and continue to build upon. So, all in all, to your question, Mr. Weber, as far as where do we go from here, I think we follow the guidance, follow the blueprint, follow the path that you all have put in motion, that we all have contributed and added to, because that's one of the things last year that our building level leaders as well as teachers were able to do, is revise and modify the strategic goals that we'll put in motion. So outside of it, Mr. Sonsini, we sincerely appreciate the data that you provided. All is not lost, all is not bad, and we indeed have things that are occurring that we will continue to celebrate and continue to build upon. But also, as we know, the classic definition of insanity, I believe, is repeatedly doing the same things but expecting different results. And so therefore we do indeed have to approach what we're doing in a different form and fashion. So, Mr. President Weber and trustees, that's all that I have. I do apologize. But we're optimistic. We're excited.
All right.
It should be noted that Member Stoltz left the conversation at 7:10, just for record.
This time she's really absent.
She gone. She gone.
Noted. Any questions, guys?
No, I think the light was shining tonight in a lot of areas, and I think we all got past it. So I appreciate the efforts. I look forward to helping you guys make the change. And I'm impressed with the educational question that came from the attorney.
Let the minutes reflect that. There's no one's taking minutes.
All right, well, two more. And move on.
Plowing through, let's do it.
All right, moving on to action
Got a lot of work to do yet.
Yeah. Item 6, action items. Dr. Wright.
President Wilbur, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Scalf join us to ask for recommendation for 6.01 donations.
Okay, and my computer restarted, so I am currently there. All right, so before you tonight, we have $4,200 worth of donations. Donations were received from Nearpod Mind Institute, both for the Summer of E-Learning Conference, which we heard Mr. Arnold discuss this earlier in the meeting. We truly are thankful because a lot of things that they were able to do would not have been able to happen without those donations. We'd also like to thank Vintage Wheels Auto Club. They donated to the RHS track and field team. Music Pantry donated to the RHS band department, which if you haven't seen them out practicing, they are getting ready for State Fair and sound really great out working hard across from the high school. Heartland Pet Food Manufacturing, Inc. has donated to the RHS boys golf team. First Bank Richmond donated to the RHS class of 22 billboard. That was a really fun billboard that we are able to do for our seniors. Edward Jones donated to both the boys and the girls golf team in memory of Justin Cross. So tonight it's my recommendation that we accept $4,200 worth of donations.
I move to approve the donations as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Aaron Stevens, second by Brad Walton. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very generous.
And I'm sure Member Cross is very appreciative of the fact that the legacy continues.
All right, anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. I guess we're back to
Mrs. Scalf for 6.02 through 6.04. Mrs. Scalf.
Through 8.
8.
Oh, with 8. However, there was
Do
a.
you want to handle 5 when we get there?
Actually, you can go ahead. You're good.
Okay.
All right.
All right,
Mrs. Scalf.
we'll just roll. All right, so before you, under action item 6.02 is cash tuition and transfer tuition rates. The student cash tuition and transfer rates are estimated calculations based on anticipated expenditures and revenue for the ensuing school year, according to IC code 20-2611-6. Listed below are the initial rates we will charge for non-resident students who are out of state, who gain permission to attend Richmond Community Schools. This does include international students and for a student who's placed in the custody of a resident of Richmond Community Schools district, but may be from out of state. Amended billings may be prepared after actual 22-23 costs and revenues are known. For 2022-23 school year, out of state tuition for students grades K through 12 is $8,658.18, and international student cash tuition is $10,000. That is a per diem rate for out-of-state students of $48.11 and a per diem rate for international students of $55.56. It's my recommendation that the board approve the student transfer and cash tuition rates for the 2022 and through 2023 school year as they have been presented.
Thank you.
I'll move that we approve the cash tuition and transfer rates.
Motion by Keith Moore,
Second.
second by Aaron Stevens. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scout.
Okay, our next agenda item is the request to advertise the annual financial report. This is an annual action item. IC code 5-3-1-3 requires that the secretary of each school corporation publish an annual financial report one time annually, not earlier than August 1st, but also not later than August 15th of each year. Upon publication, we will submit a copy of the annual financial report to the Department of Education on or before August 31st of 2022. And the department makes that available for public inspection. The report will be published on the Palladium item, and proof of publication will be submitted to the Department of Education not later than August 31st, 2022. Due to the timing of the first meeting in August, we are requesting permission to advertise the report prior to the required deadline. A full copy of the 2021 annual financial report will be provided to the board prior to publication. It's my recommendation that the board approve the request for permission to advertise the 2021 annual financial report.
Thank you.
I move that we approve action item 6.03, the request to advertise the annual financial report.
Motion by Kristen Brunton,
I'll second.
second by Jeff Schleifer. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scout.
Okay, before you tonight under action item 6.04 is the Form 9 biannual financial report. The board has been provided with the transmittal edit form, which will be submitted to the Department of Education upon its approval, and as well as the certification page, which will be signed off by the board president, the superintendent, and myself. So the Form 9 is the report that is utilized by the Department of Education to document all financial transactions, both revenue and expenditures, throughout the first 6 months of the year. That's reported in June. The last 6 months of the year is reported in December. So it's my recommendation tonight that we approve the first 6 months of 2022 Form 9 biannual financial report.
Thank you.
I would like to move that we approve the first half of the Form 9 biannual financial report.
Motion by Keith Moore,
Second.
second by Kristen Brunton. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scout.
Okay, 6.05, the MOU with Ivy Technical College. I ask that we table that agenda item tonight. Ivy Tech is going through some transition at the moment, and we need some time to continue that conversation. So tonight it's my recommendation that we table item 6.05.
Thank you.
I move that we table action item 6.05, the MOU with Ivy Tech College.
Motion by Aaron Stevens,
I'll second.
second by Brad Walton. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scout.
Okay, our next agenda item is the agreement or the memorandum of understanding with the City of Richmond for the fire and rescue course at Richmond High School. The MOU before you tonight has no change from prior years with the exception of dates. So this is for the 2022-2023 school year, and we'd like to thank the city for the partnership of this course. It's been a really great opportunity for our students, and it has resulted in true workers for the fire department. It's been a really great partnership. We've seen a tremendous increase in the number of participants, and there is usually a wait list. So We do take a lot of students from outside of Richmond if there is availability. After Richmond, students have the option to join that course. And it really has been a successful program that we look to continue as long as is possible. So it's my recommendation tonight that we approve the Fire and Rescue course MOU with the City of Richmond.
Thank you.
Motion that we approve 6.06, the fire and rescue course with the City of Richmond.
Motion by Brad Walton,
Second.
second by Aaron Stevens. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scow.
Okay, moving on to the RHS pool filtration bid. Bids for the pool filtration replacement project were received and opened on Friday, July the 8th, 2022. The notice to bidders was published in the Palladium item on June 17th and June 24th, 2022. Proof of publication and all bid documents are on file in the business office. The receipt of the bid report is attached for your information. It is recommended that the bid be awarded to Spear Corporation with a base bid of $353,191. I will note that this project did come in on budget, and that was a nice thing to see, as construction projects have definitely been one of those things that we've seen supply chain issues be directly impacting. So it's my recommendation tonight that the RHS pool filtration replacement bid be awarded to Spear Corporation as it's presented.
Thank you.
I'll move that we approve the pool filtration bid.
Motion by Keith Morey,
I'll second.
second by Jeff Schleifer.
Actually, Mr. President, you're awarding the contract. The contract itself will have yet to be prepared, but this will be, I think, probably comfort to the bidder
Okay.
and allow us to issue notice to proceed.
Okay. So do I need to change it to just accepting the bid? Okay.
We're just making the award of the contract. The contract itself will come back.
Gotcha.
Execution of the contract will be an administrative matter that does not have to occur in a public meeting, so we'll catch Mr. Weber and Mrs. Stoltz.
Sign our lives away.
It just goes away.
Any other questions or comments?
How will this affect the swim dive season that's coming up?
Right, so we actually are trying really hard
That's
to
what
get
it's
this done ASAP, and that is where the notice that Mr. Cross just gave you is pretty important, because the project may be done before at least the piece that kind of is the most of it by the next board meeting, so that we can try to get things in as soon as possible. We do expect possible practices to have to start at another pool, which we've already been in contact with another school to assist us with that if needed. But the goal is that we get in there ASAP. So they are working diligently to make that happen. It already looks super good in there. They're waiting on a few key pieces of equipment that will drive that deadline. But at the moment, it doesn't look like there's a delay. So that's positive. And then we'll just be a couple of weeks into some practices somewhere else, but we'll be able to then jump into season is the plan. So.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Mrs. Scow.
Okay, the last item I have before you tonight, at least in this section, is a list of change orders before you and one amendment to an agreement. We have change orders with Carroll Electric on the mechanical modernization project at RHS. That change order is $6,177.83. Arcom Builders have 3 change orders on the RHS second and third floor. One in the amount of $3,571, one a decrease or a deduct of $3,774, and another deduct of $1,200. This change order process will actually complete that project. They have, I believe, officially punched the list, and we are making final payment tonight for those services. So the final item for you is an amendment to our contract with LWC. This is for the RHS Tower Restoration Project. This is something that we knew it was going to probably be needed as we looked into those remaining items that had to be done. And this is just a cleanup of their services and making sure that got done. So that cost us $44,330. And it's my recommendation tonight that we approve the 4 change orders and the 1 amendment to the already established agreement as they're presented.
Thank you.
I'll move that we approve the 4 change orders and 1 amendment as it was described.
Motion by Keith Morey,
Second.
second by Kristen Brenton. Any questions or comments? Do you know when the walkthrough was done, the final walkthrough? Was it this week?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it was Tuesday. And there's still some things they're just kind of cleaning up, but I believe it was Tuesday.
That was through last week, and there were a lot of punch list items to my eye.
There's some we're just taking.
So, I'm sure our people have it in good hands. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, I now ask that Mrs. Sonsini rejoin the conversation to ask for approval of items 6.09 through 6.11. Mrs. Sonsini.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accepts the contract for Mr. Buddy Berry as presented. Richmond Community Schools annually gathers educators on the Teacher Professional Development Day in August prior to the first day of school in an effort to unite and inspire our district for the upcoming school year. The keynote speaker will be funded using Title II grant funds allocated for professional development awarded to Richmond Community Schools.
I make a motion that we approve the contract for a speaker.
Thank you. And motion by Keith Morey,
I'll second.
second by Jeff Schleifer. Any questions or comments?
Yes, can you tell us a brief something about Buddy Berry?
Absolutely.
Not on his website,
Set
but
him on fire.
Yeah, there you go. Mr. Schleifer's on it. So he is a superintendent for independent schools in Kentucky, Eminence, Kentucky. I happened to visit there a few years ago, but he's a very inspirational speaker. He's presented at superintendent conferences. He's presented at the principal conference across the state. He has a passion for reinventing the K-12 school experience. His presentation, School on Fire, is a framework for innovation for reinventing education. That model is currently in its 11th full year of implementation, and he is seeing dramatic results. He's in his 13th year as superintendent of that district, and his team's success has allowed him to be invited to the White House twice. The first one as one of the top 100 school superintendents in America at their only National Connected Superintendent Summit. Dr. Berry's work in school district has also been the focus of numerous media and news stories, including films and Edutopia. And he is married and has 4 children, and they all have attended the school district that he is a leader in. So he will be here we are planning in the afternoon, something a little bit different than what we've done in the past with our district professional development. And in the morning, we're looking to have him work with our cabinet central office team. So super excited about that day with him.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Dr. Wright.
Trustees and President Weber, asking Mrs. Sonsini to rejoin us regarding the National Institution for Excellence in Teaching.
It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accepts the contract for Richmond Community Schools K-8 from NIET for professional development for the 22-23 school year as presented. NIT services are structured around the core belief that every child deserves an effective educator in every classroom every day. We also believe in that same core belief here at Richmond Community Schools. There are a variety of services provided by NIET to help identify, equip, and empower teachers, schools, and system leaders to drive instruction and growth that we have already been implementing at Fairview and Dennis. Richmond Community Schools is expanding this partnership K-8 to ensure equity of resources to ensure all staff Leaders and teachers have the opportunity to fulfill the RCS strategic goal of operating as a professional learning organization and increasing student achievement. Training will be funded using grant funds. The attached contract, again, is for Richmond Community Schools K through 8.
Thank you. Happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the NIET contract.
Motion by
as
Jeff.
presented.
Motion by Jeff Slifer.
I'll second.
Second by Keith Morey. Any questions or comments?
I would just say that part of our educational planning working group, I'm not sure when we met, 2 weeks ago, maybe. But it was nice to have the principal from Fairview here and a teacher who shared their experience. I know we had a presentation, we heard, we've got emails, but for them to be able to kind of, tell us the positives, the negatives, and the overall, the challenges, but then the extreme rewards too, and explain it from a teacher perspective and a building perspective of some of those highlights was enlightening. It was good for me to hear. I've heard negatives and positives, but the take I took from it was that, and I think of myself as an educator, that you may have a classroom and you are doing everything's going fine in your classroom, and it's not something to evaluate how you're doing or change something, but I think as educators, or myself, I think of myself as a lifelong learner, like I always can grow, and maybe I'll learn something new. Maybe I don't want to change anything, but maybe I do. And I think part of the collaboration that it allows, it can only be useful and helpful. And I know that when Nicole and I visited schools and we met with several of the schools, but we're able to see the discussions that were taking place and the collaboration between teachers, it seemed very positive. And so I'm hoping that although there may be some challenges with it, as we heard from Mrs. Service at Fairview at the beginning, that those will evolve and we can find the positive in those things.
Yeah, and I think if anything, if it provides an opportunity for educators to talk about their craft in a focused way, like you mentioned, using the data, I think they will get better. That's how you get better as an educator. And maybe what you bring to the table is how your process. Maybe you're not lacking. Maybe you got the sauce, the secret sauce that other people need to hear about. So I think I'm just hopeful everybody can go into it, get on board. I mean, try it out. Obviously, you're going to have to see, and I get it. I've been there through all of the different things that get rolled out, and I'm just hopeful people can go into it with an open mind and share what they know. Share. That's the opportunity here, and to be able to share craft knowledge, I think if we can provide that time for educators, that's a really big piece. And if it can be scaffolded in a way that allows them to look at data and focus on a common language, kids are going to benefit from that.
And I think we do need to have buy-in, and it's clear that if we don't have buy-in, nothing will be successful. And I think Mrs. Service talked about that. The buy-in at first at her building was low, and then as teachers began to talk and discuss and see some changes, then the buy-in grew, and by the end of the year, it definitely was much higher. The buy-in, I think what Keith said, just keeping an open mind, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be a positive experience and not something dreaded or added on. I don't think we want to add anything else on to teachers. I think we are trying to help and support, and hoping that this will be a help and a support.
And those are the three primary reasons as to why I continue to delve as much research and as much, try to do as much homework on this particular framework. As Mr. Morey said, as educators, we've seen things come and go in different forms, fashions, different names and colors. However, with NIET, what I saw most the three things I saw most is it would provide us a framework to accomplish those goals that I just lengthily reviewed, and I apologize for that dissertation as it almost felt like, but the goals and the charge of becoming a PLO, this framework will get us there. I'm confident that it will. The teacher support, that piece was huge with regard to this framework and model. It provides an element of teacher support, and most importantly, providing teachers with the opportunity to provide meaningful feedback and input and be able to drive what's truly going on within their classrooms. And then finally, the sustainability. As I said, and as has been referenced and mentioned by our classroom teachers. We've had history of teachers that have gotten the job. The challenge is we haven't necessarily had frameworks to maintain and sustain such high levels of achievement. So, like I said, I'm excited about where we're going. Most importantly, we got some work to do to bring everybody aboard.
I'll just add, I think I personally love piloting programs, and we have ran this for 18 months in our district. I think we're as informed going into it as we possibly could be. And I think we know what we're getting. And so rather than just, a totally new program that no one's seen that we're trying to implement, we should be ready to go. We know what this is. And so I think that's fantastic. And I think sharing that with the rest of the community, that's where we'll get. And so I'm super excited. So thank you. Anything else? All right, hearing nothing, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Dr. Wright?
President Weber, trustees, I ask that Mrs. Scalford join the conversation, and we're here to retrieve approval for item 6.11. Mrs. Scalford.
Okay, it is the recommendation of the superintendent that the RCS Board of School Trustees move in the direction of utilizing Meridian Health Services for nursing services at RCS. It's the expectation of RCS that current nursing staff members be retained by Meridian Health Services. The contract will be coming to the board upon completion of legal review.
I'll make
Thank
that
you.
motion.
Motion by Jeff Slifer,
I'll second.
second by Brad Moulton. Any questions or comments?
I guess just if I could review again our timeline, I know we shared it last time, but to briefly go over it again, that this has been a process of lots of visits and communication and learning about Meridian and what they can offer. And so it started December 3rd with Meridian meeting with Dr. Wright. March 6th, Meridian presented at the public meeting. April 26th, tour of board members and Dr. Wright. May the 11th, the nurses met via Google Meet with Meridian, with Dr. Wright as well. May 24th, the nurses, Dr. Wright, and some board members toured Meridian Health Services in Muncie Schools. That was May 24th. The June 7th, the nurses met with the executive committee. July 5th, the nurses met with Meridian and Dr. Wright and board member Stoltz. And there may have been some meetings after that. That was a timeline. But I just wanted to share again. I know we shared last time with the community, publicly, but this has been a process of trying to communicate and get as many questions as we can from the nurses and field questions, and we see it with our eyes and talk with and try to work through, issues and figure out what's best and making sure that this decision is good. Also, I know the contract we talked about last time, if there's hiccups or there's things where we realize, oh, this is a surprise that we can get out of the contract, is that right? There's ways out if, but right now, they've answered most of our questions, all of our questions, I say, and the nurses' questions and any questions we've posed. And I just want to remind, I guess, the public of the process this has taken and how we tried to take our time with this and also, involve important stakeholders in this.
And Mrs. Brunn, just to piggyback from one of our RCS nurses, correspondence that I received, I wanted to write and thank you for all that you've done to help ease the mind of the nursing staff and what you've done to seek answers on the matter of outsourcing. I know you have a lot of folks demanding your time and attention, but you took the time to listen to us, address our concerns, and facilitate good discussion. I truly appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds for RCS. And so, again, to your point, I think we indeed, and it will become the model for what it is that we do when engaging in dialogue, and most importantly, receiving that feedback and input from the practitioners, whether it be in the classroom or here in the clinic.
Thank you.
Without belaboring it, is there a very brief, my understanding is that our services from building to building won't change dramatically, change at all?
Should be enhanced.
Yeah, it should be improved.
Right. Yeah. So is there just for the public, are there a few things that we can go through that, like how those will be enhanced?
Well, I think for one of them, I mean, right now, like our elementary buildings, we have one nurse per 2 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that we'll actually we'll have full-time nursing in every building is huge.
Okay.
I think the other thing, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead, I thought you finished.
I think the other thing is the ability for them to provide the medical equipment that we could probably not afford, that if we have a student or staff member, as far as that goes, that we could actually within minutes be connected and talking to a live doctor with the doctor saying real time, what do you call it, body, not symptoms, but the
Elements or
heart rate, pulse, that
Vitals.
type of stuff.
Vitals.
Vitals, thank you. I mean, so just, I just think from I just think of if we have a student in serious, and again, or staff member in a serious situation, I think the chances of that student being served quicker and more efficiently are there. And besides, as a school board, I'm not so sure that we should be in the medical business. I mean, we're not experts. Not that our nurses are experts, yes, but I'd rather the physicians be managing the care for our students than I would us.
Mr. Cross?
I think I learned today, we actually had a meeting with our third-party administrator for the county's insurance program, who happens to be the same GPA that the school has, Dunn & Associates. The Department of Labor is very aggressively reviewing qualified plans. Now, they tend to review private sector a little quicker and then probably get around to public sector. But the big push button is not only are they insisting upon equality for mental health and mental health pieces in the plan, they want extra. In fact, they want that to be a point of focus. They'd rather see almost inordinate resources granted to that because they feel that there's this shortfall of that for a lot of reasons. So I think this will allow, through the utilization of Meridian Health as a federally qualified health center, to have resources, maybe not directly on staff, but certainly available for their referral. And I really believe that the scope of services that can be made available in the time frame is going to really be enhanced. I have some concerns for the nurses that I've just emailed today to Dr. Wright, and I think he's going to follow up with Meridian Health, primarily on a malpractice insurance. I want to make sure that they're immediately covered, that there's no tail coverage needed for their experiences here at Richmond, while they're at Richmond. But those are everyday affairs. That's not a reinventing any wheels.
That's why it's going through legal review.
Well, I've looked at the contract and they got it back. But that's not going to be in the contract. But I think the nurses themselves should have some peace of mind in knowing that there's not going to be any gap, if you will. And we should have that too, because we're the employer who would ultimately be liable.
And Mr. Moore, in a brief nutshell, to answer your question, I promise, students will indeed still receive the same quality of care that our current nursing staff, and our current nursing staff have done a tremendous job, without a doubt, over the course of time. However, now they'll be equipped, as with Mr. Slifer mentioned, with other resources and tools and equipment to, with parental consent, to delve into other care, levels of care. If a student comes in with an earache and that earache has been for the last 4 days, and maybe the family or the student may be challenged to receive such extended care right there in the school clinic. They'll be able to receive it with parental consent. Most importantly, one of the things that's being, as I say, overshadowed but not stated, is that these clinics will also be able to serve our faculty, where we see the model in a neighboring school corporation. That neighboring school corporation's principals have stated that faculty and staff have taken advantage of the clinics being right there on site in location, so as to also improve upon teacher absenteeism.
So it sounds like I'm hearing that students may have more effective or at least quicker access to mental health sort of situations as well. Is that
Within the initial onset of Meridian transitioning into the district, one of the things that we have already at our disposal is contracted vendors that have been around for years and have been serving our families and our communities for years, and they still are going to be here working in concert. That's the one thing that Meridian has stated time and again, is that over the course of time they've worked with some of our other partners hand in hand, so that again, the mental health, the social emotional health, the physical care. We right now, and of which you all may indeed approve, is providing, as Mr. Slifer said, the utmost and providing some true resources.
And so, from my understanding of it, all of our current nurses will have the opportunity to apply, correct?
One of the things that Meridian has stated, and one of the things that our nurses have asked repeatedly, is if indeed they have interest in moving to Meridian.
The expectation of RCS, the current nursing staff members be retained by Meridian, right? Okay.
And Meridian is committed, as they have consistently said, in bringing them on.
And I know they've been involved in this process. My impression is that most of them have had their questions answered and feel like this is an okay move.
Of the response that I just read, as well as others that I've received in conversations, yes, Mr. Boyd, I think that right now our nurses have expressed complete comfort with where things are, and are, as they mentioned, selflessly, they love Richmond Community Schools, have loved serving in Richmond Community Schools, loved our families and kids, and at the same time, they realize that this may indeed be an alternative approach to provide that much more love for our school corporation.
Got one more. Their compensation will be equivalent or better, I assume. Benefits,
those questions came up, and indeed Meridian has stated that there will be an opportunity for them to receive that much more compensation, and maybe even.
Was that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a yes or no that I really want to know is, does that mean that our existing nurses will be at the forefront of being hired by Meridian?
Yes.
That was I mean, that's what it says in the recommendation. Is the expectation of RCS.
And we can't obviously guarantee that.
I understand that, but I certainly hope that they are going to be given first opportunity.
But one of the other things they can do is negotiate their contracts and their salary, which was something that we learned. They may indeed have a lot of leverage on their side.
And with, I think, the students, something to note is that, a student, falls on the playground and they go to the, Meridian. They don't become a patient of Meridian. They're just, put a Band-Aid on, it's clean. If they need medication like they normally have, they're not Meridian patients. If, they throw up or need to go home, it's only, when it goes to the next level, like maybe you mentioned. Or I personally liked, being a former teacher and being busy and in the classroom all the time, and maybe I have a sore throat and it's, lingered on by the end of the day. And then I think, I need to go to urgent care. I can go to Meridian. They can check me for strep. I can do it in my building, and which would be nice for teachers. Or instead of flu shots at Civic Hall, they can take flu shots around the classrooms to the teachers as needed. But it helps accommodate, teachers, I guess.
You don't
want we don't want teachers coming to school sick. I'm not promoting that, but I'm saying, you get busy as an educator and you don't have time to check on some things, and that may be an option for staff.
And it's all with parental consent and or faculty consent. One thing to close, our nurses were concerned that they would be forced to increase quota or forced to increase business for Meridian. And Meridian Health stated that is indeed not the case. Most importantly, to Mrs. Brunton's point, Mr. Moore, which you continue to read, is that Meridian is committed to bi-weekly meetings to review processes. And if indeed there are revisions that need to be made, as they have already done in other corporations, they will make those revisions. Meridian stays in close contact with Central Office leadership, as well as the nurses at the building level, so that communication channels. That was one of the things our nurses mentioned, is that if indeed we go the route of Meridian, they're going to still be able to call us and speak with those that they've known for their entire career. And Meridian was completely fine with such.
And we can terminate this at any point with, I think, a fairly 120 days. So.
After reviewing, if it's not going as expected, then we indeed are going to have such options.
I still have a lot of uncertainty. I have a lot of uncertainty, and I hope that if it does pass, that my uncertainty is going to be negated. But as of right now, I still have a lot of uncertainty.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1. Moving on to policy review and update. We have one policy, item 7.01, policy 5471, employee expense reimbursement, first reading.
I would like to motion that we move 7.01, policy 5471, employee expense reimbursement to second reading.
Second.
Motion by Brad Walton, second by Aaron Stevens. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Oh, all three of us did.
You guys can cover it.
Okay, I thought we were maybe gonna alter this to add in the time frame. So
That's gonna be in the administrative guideline.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't
never
go
mind.
in the board
It
policy.
doesn't go,
Yes,
okay.
so that has been done.
Oh, okay.
It was, supposed to be sent out to you.
Oh, okay.
So I'll take care of doing that, but, the policy covers the piece that is required, and then the administrative guideline follows up on the process in place to complete that policy. So it's actually going to be contained in that. I just do want to make a note for our staff, and we will put this out in email upon final approval, but since it's first reading, the change is to move the mileage rate to the federal rate from the state rate.
Which is a higher rate.
It is a higher rate, and with gas prices being what they are, both the state and the federal levels made a change over the summer. So we are making a change as well in response to that. So the other piece to that in the administrative guideline, the part that will change for processing purposes is that in practice there has always been a deadline to get that in on a monthly basis if requesting any form of reimbursement. And we are going to put that actually in writing in the guideline that we will process 30 days after the actual expense has occurred. And if anything is turned in later than 45 days from the day it was incurred, those will not be paid. So we do have some situations in which staff delay their reimbursements in a very extreme way. Most generally, everybody already gets it in under the 30 days, so it's not an issue. And I will say it is less than a handful that change would impact if they aren't paying attention. So I will say that 95% of all reimbursements received are well within that 30 days, if not immediately following the incurred expense. But we will put that out to staff. We have made that effective. I believe the date was September 1 for when we will do that administrative guideline, so that we have time to give staff notice, make sure that they're aware of it, and then we'll move into the guideline process.
So if a staff member travels and turns in mileage and their event is August 1st, they have till the middle of September, because 45 days after that event to claim. Okay.
Right, and then
I'm hearing you're asking for 30. You
30 is
you
the
want it
right
by
way to
30,
do
you
it.
get a 15-minute, another 15-day like warning period or whatever, right?
If you're late, you have an extra 15 days, but I really want people to turn it in 30 because it's just much better. There's less likely that receipts would get lost, or if something happens and a receipt isn't exactly easy to obtain, they have a higher likelihood to be able to call wherever they travel to and get a copy in that time. So it's one of those things that
and you need to get it wrapped up.
Yeah, it makes accounting easier.
It does
don't
make
think it's
accounting
unreasonable.
easier, though that's not the main reason why we
Right.
did that.
All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to board reports and discussions. Item 8.01, Educational Planning Working Group.
I have notes.
Oh,
Do you want me to share? But I'll
Mrs.
make,
Brenton, of course.
I'll try to make them quick because this has been a lengthy meeting. The first, we had and which I already spoke of, the NIT follow-up with some Fairview staff with positive and negatives to hear real life examples of things they've seen and how their staff reacted. So that was nice to be able to hear from real examples of a school using NIET and how it's affecting them. We talked about STEAM and STEM, and I may not have all the notes here, so, but we definitely are saying it's STEAM school, not STEM, so we're referring to it as STEAM going forward. Their timeline was presented, and I think some notes were made that, staffing, we need to get staffing in place to move forward with the ideas and the timeline that was presented, and I think that timeline was presented at the board meeting at one point, maybe a month ago, same timeline. And then we discussed the synchronous, asynchronous, or synchronous instruction for snow days. And Dawn shared with us the statistics from reaching out to the staff of how they feel about that. So a great survey to those who participated, and it was about a 50-50 split on if you wanted an e-learning day or a snow day added at the end, and then also a community to parents, and it was also about a 50-50 split. So we didn't really have a very clear direction as far as how
what will make somebody unhappy.
someone's going to be mad. Everyone's right. And so ultimately, I think because of the time of year and everything going on, we decided to add snow days to the end of the year. Is that correct? So we went back and forth. Yes.
That's what the calendar says in
Okay,
8.05.
that's what it is then. That's what it was. Did I miss anything that we talked about? Okay, that's it.
All right. Any questions or comments?
Our next meeting is August 15th. Thank you, John.
Great. Thank you all for the work on that committee. 8.02, Building and Grounds. Jeff, Brad.
We have not met since our last board meeting, since our last.
It seems like some stuff's coming up. What's on the slate for you guys? Do you know?
Well, I know one of the things that we need to do is we've heard over the last month or two all kinds of things that need to go to the committee, like recycling. And so I think one of the things that we really need to put on our agenda for our next meeting is what are all of those tasks that people want us to get involved with, because as the list has been voiced, it's rather large.
I think another one was restrooms.
Oh, you had restrooms, and you had, the Hibbert building, the modifications coming for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the list was getting pretty long, so I think we're going to have to figure out how to streamline some of that.
Or prioritize, possibly.
Yeah.
Is the solar audit, is that still on your list, or did that actually move forward?
I've not heard from.
I think Nicole was.
I've not
I
heard.
might have got to John,
Okay.
but I didn't know.
I know Dennis is going to be on our list. Well, it's on our list. It's being turned over to finance, and that's going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about in our next finance meeting, which is going to be scheduled, I think, within the next couple of weeks. So,
All right. Anything else for Building and Grounds? Sounds like you guys need to meet.
well, yeah, we do.
Moving on to 8.03, Finance Working Group. Jeff.
I just said, didn't
Did you listen, John? No, we aren't meeting right now.
Yeah.
But we have a meeting that we're going to be planning just because of a lot going on with the start of school with the budget and preparing things. So we postponed that until.
Our last finance topic was the
Reimbursement.
employee
It was.
reimbursement.
Yes, and the mileage, yeah.
All right.
I too need Mount Webster time too.
Oh.
Jeff's still talking. 8.04, Marketing Working Group. Brad, John, Nicole. Yes. No, were you there? I don't think Brad was there. Nicole's not here. We met with Q7. Bridge has been working on some cohesive mascot artwork and design. They're kind of all over the place, and so they're going to take a look at putting a proposal together to kind of have a theme. If I'm missing things, Bridget, please fill in. I think we're pretty happy with the devil. Obviously, we just put it on the floor at the high school, and what the high school's done. But the other mascots, I think, could use some updating. And then Bridget, we're doing.
With their banners and then.
Yeah, if you want to fill in on the banners and stuff, please.
We're just waiting for the brackets to come in. The banners have arrived. And then we also purchased feather banners that have student artwork on those banners. So those have already been delivered to the schools. Went up today for registration, for in-person registration. And then those big banners for the legislature we have them. We're just waiting for the brackets to go up. So there have been 2 car accidents that have damaged poles in the past, so we don't have brackets for those poles. So we've just replaced those. So again, we'd want to have all 11 banners up at the same time and not miss anybody. So, and then of course with the mascots, we just want to update and freshen up everything. And some mascots we just need something a little more digital to make the
Well, a
kids
couple
happy.
of the mascots were hand drawn.
I'm sorry?
A couple of the mascots were hand drawn.
They are, and that history is still important. We still want to keep that. We just want to see what we can do to help.
Get them in a vectorized format.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So a good meeting there, and I believe, are we meeting? I don't think we scheduled a second.
We're waiting for the Q7 to give us a proposal.
So probably within sometime next month, I would presume. So moving on to item 8.05, the 2022-2023 RCS calendar. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, as it is recommended that the school board accepts the following changes to the 2022-2023 school calendar. In short, with some of the correspondence you all received via email, some simple changes made and alterations. We switched the teacher in-service day with the teacher work day on August 8th and 9th. First semester we found actually has 87 days and not 84, as was previously listed on the calendar. The 6th week grading period begins on February 22nd and not the 20th. And then indeed there was an additional day for parent-teacher conferences that is being proposed for February 27th as an e-learning day. And then ultimately, as was referenced and as has been meaningfully discussed, inclement weather days will indeed be added as we were recommending at the end of the school year in lieu of synchronous instruction days.
And that is in part because of the new legislation that went through that said you could only have 3, correct?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that's been identified several times by not only our classroom teachers, but also we at central office and even our board of governance. It's one of those variables that are outside of our sphere of control. The legislative body will indeed pass.
You know, we've had discussions in the past of not having those e-learning days on parent-teacher conferences and the first day of school, stuff like that, which there's some merit to it. We're only allowed 3 of those now to really further that discussion. I don't know that it's probably too late to adjust the calendar at this point, but going forward in future years, we really need to look hard about that.
That was one of the other conversations that was had is with regard to incremental days, and I apologize, Mr. Moore, is where things are at this particular point in juncture for this particular year, adding days at the end of the year, no one really is in favor of it. However, with this particular unique situation, a lot of corporations are indeed reverting this year to such a proposal, and then next year maybe working to build the days in as used to be the case in the past.
I guess that was my main point, is that we typically are not making adjustments to this year's calendar this late, and it's because that law went into effect July 1st, correct? Right, so we're having to make some adjustments on the fly, but I also agree. I mean, what Kristen said with the surveys, it looks like it's about 50-50, whether we want to think about entertaining some sort of a larger survey where we get some more feedback about where people stand with this, because I think, and really clarify in that survey what our options are at this point, because it can't be just, it has to be synchronous, correct?
Correct. Per state statute at this point,
Yeah.
more than 50% of
Yeah.
instruction has to be synchronized.
Yeah, so meaning that teacher has to be on the camera and in doing actual face-to-face, if you will, instruction via the video format, correct? So I think, like, and we've had this conversation multiple times, and every time it gets into that, but I think we have a more limited scope now that the state has forced us to look at, but I agree with Brad. I don't like it either. But the changes that we are making, just to be clear, are not changes that are going to, somebody's not going to say, hey, we already had our spring break booked. Those are not changes that we have. The only foreseeable thing that I could see is if we have 3 or 4 snow days and somebody's booked their vacation for the day after school's out, they'll miss that makeup day,
Now,
correct?
if we have snow days early on in November, December, do we still look at President's Day? In the past, we've used Martin Luther King Day, or not Martin Luther King Day, but President's Day.
I don't think so at this point, because people on a calendar, people have already made plans based on long weekends.
Mm.
And to Mr. Walton's point, that's where when such days are built in and or such contingencies are identified early on, you can then explore some of those options with some of those.
But I think it's
Good Fridays.
it's worth starting a conversation now, asking the public in a large format, getting some feedback, and having so that we can have time to have that conversation with REA and really get that settled out. And I know there's a calendar committee that's probably already working in that way, but
we should be now talking about the next calendar.
correct. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And
I think it behooves us to have a calendar out 2 years.
Yes.
And also worth noting that because the discussion was back and forth and so close, we did have a draft of what a synchronous plan would look like for our educators. We had shared that draft in corporate discussion with the association to get feedback. But we paused when we found that the 50-50 and we chose to add it in a day. But we did have a draft of what that would look like for a teacher.
So that could go to discussion for the upcoming year.
Correct.
Okay.
I would just add, as we move forward, I agree with Keith. I'd love to see more stakeholder surveys, because we have really locked, by deciding school needs to be over before Memorial Day, we've really constrained ourselves. And I don't know, I would like to know how important that truly is. Because I think looking at the calendars in the past, we're already starting, August, early second week of August. And then, since we've added the week for fall break, that constraint of Memorial Day, I think, puts a pretty strict bind on us. And I don't know that I'd just like to see if people would be open to that, because I think we can do a lot of things on the calendar.
You mean starting later in August and going possibly,
shifting at some point. And I'm not saying we're doing anything. I'd like to ask what their interest is and what they'd like to. Because that constraint, that drives everything. And I think
Well, I think the biggest constraint is the fact they want that first semester finished before Christmas break.
Yeah.
That already limits the days to be uneven. There are already 6 less days in the fall than there is the spring, so I think that's another constraint, that if we realigned and started after Labor Day, would you want the last 6 weeks? There's a lot of people that say, I can't believe you're going to school before Labor Day.
But I'd like some.
You get it on both.
It'd be nice to get a little bit of feedback on some of those type of issues.
I know that RHS, throughout our conversations, they had also expressed just some challenges with the year expanding on, and some of the end of year assessments and graduation requirements and prerequisites and things.
Yeah, when we start, the second week in August, that's pretty early.
Yeah. Well, but starting that early, to then also go beyond
Yeah.
makes
I mean,
it pretty long too.
It's 180 days
It's-
after
yeah,
you shake it out,
yeah.
so.
So this is gonna come back at the next meeting?
I believe we are approving it.
We're approving it right now.
I believe
Okay.
that, yes, our recommendation is that
Okay.
indeed you all.
It was in discussions, that's why I didn't know, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was well, and I think that's the unique.
No, I mean, on our agenda, it was on,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do we need an approval then? Is that what we're saying, Dr. Wright?
If indeed you all would, we recommend that indeed, and we seek you all's approval for the matter of the item. And to Mr. Moore's point, I think it may have, there's a central office team member that is not present that may have indeed placed it for.
No,
But
that's,
That's probably because she looked at, we had 6.11, so we had 11 items already.
yeah. But so where are we, we're looking for
We'll need
a
a
motion, okay.
I'll motion we approve the 2022-2023 RCS calendar as presented.
Motion by Brad Walton,
Second.
second by Kristen Brunton. On the calendar approval, any questions or comments?
Just that I think it's, I really think we gotta start, I know we like having those PD days and being e-learning days, but I think we gotta look at pulling those out at some point. I just think, especially now that we've got like 2 at the front end and 2 at after coming back, like having 2 at each semester with the other limitations, I think we just got to look at that and whether that it cuts to 1 on each one. And I also think, that's enough
Just
for the calendar.
to clarify that, so the one e-learning day, there are 3 e-learning days. The first one is for the parent-teacher conferences in October. The second one is for the January professional development day, and the third one is for the parent-teacher conferences in February. So really, one of the 3 days is for PD. The other 2 are for traditional e-learning, so that we can provide feedback and communication to our families both in first semester and second semester. So that means that any days this year that would be snow-related or inclement weather would be required to be added to the end of the school year. The only other option we could have explored was doing synchronous instruction when those snow days happened. And that's where we saw the 50% families in favor, 48% add to the end of the school year, and nearly 50-50 for our faculty in that decision.
But one thing's for sure, and I apologize to interject, one thing's for sure, Mr. Moore, is that we indeed are going to look at finding ways to provide more time for professional development for our educators within the schedule as it's set, and with the calendar committees
and my understanding is part of that conversation has to do with REA and contract hours on those parent-teacher conferences as well, right? Because they don't want, I mean, I'm trying to think, back in the day, you went to school all day and then you had parent-teacher conferences that night and they just stayed, and that gets tricky as well, correct? Yeah. So we gotta look at those things.
But for sure, as we raise expectations, and we indeed have to provide that professional development and raise some tutelage, absolutely.
Yep.
Try to build within that.
All right, that was all I had to say
And
about
I
it.
mean, but I hate to belabor it. I guess the reason I'd like to look at the constraints we have is because we've spent every year we spend an enormous, the administration spends time on calendar, discussion goes to discussion, and we'll talk about it for an hour at a board meeting, and so as well as the executives. So I mean, it'd be nice if we could kind of get a calendar where it was flowing without constant needling. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So, any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item 9, a preview of upcoming meeting and events. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, our next school board meeting will be Wednesday, August 10th, right here in the board room. We are looking to yet again present some of our findings as we level set throughout our district, throughout our departments district-wide.
Time you mentioned something about the applying for school board.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So I know that anyone interested in applying, putting their name in the ring to become a school board member, that opened up today, and it's open for about a month. I'm not sure the exact closing date. Last board meeting, we discussed it, and President Weber did a great job of sharing all the ins and outs of that process, so you can go back to the video to watch, because I don't think we want to review everything, other than I did attend the school board candidate forum a week ago, and I think many of the things that we as a board discussed during that last school board meeting, talking about how to become a school board member and some of the responsibilities were reviewed, which is it's a big responsibility but very rewarding. We are governance and we're not administration. We're responsible for setting policy, program oversight, approving budgets, kind of setting the vision and the direction for the future, which was shared tonight with the strategic plan that the board has worked with, and holding all accountable to that vision and direction. At liaisons to the community, establishing safe and appropriate facilities, approving recommendations from the superintendent, approving the budget, superintendent evaluation. That's kind of like an overview, a quick overview of the school board roles, but rewind, go back to our last board meeting to get all the details. I know we had some questions this evening, and we did have that kind of forum at the last meeting that talked about all the requirements and exactly the steps to take and the forms and how to do that and when those dates were presented before. So that's just a recap, quick recap.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to events. I had on my phone, the ice cream social is 31st. Is that correct?
Sunday.
The Sunday.
Sunday from 11 to
From 11, different time, from 11 to 1, band performs at 12:30, is that right? 12:45. All right, so usually it's in kind of the evening time frame, so just if you're planning to attend, remember noon Sunday. Moving on to adjournment and bell ringer, Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll keep it brief, the amazingly talented Mrs. Elisa Stewart is still indeed in service. Not having her here on the dais has been interesting, but she indeed is still providing self service on a daily basis. She and I have been in conversation about extending that service for some time. Being that we're already on borrowed time with her, we're just so excited to have her with us each and every day. And so, Mrs. Stewart,
Boy, we kept her with a good long meeting tonight too, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
She's been checking her watch.
It's my Fitbit.
Oh, I'm kidding.
We definitely thank her, and more importantly, with Mrs. Bolzer, I know that she's leaving the slate clean and in good hands. So carry the torch.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Of course.
We made you wait long enough. We better let you talk.
I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, I need to read
You
the
may
bell.
want me to leave. No, things have changed so much in 7 years, and yet things have remained the same. Like the amount of time it takes to create the calendar. There's only so many ways you can put 180 days on that calendar, and I chaired the calendar committee for years, and we had the same conversation for years. So see, that's not new at all. The technology has changed so much, and that's been a challenge for me. But I have enjoyed being with the people and at the place and the institution that I love. Everything's not perfect at all, and it won't be on this side, but I will always be a cheerleader for Richmond schools and for teachers and school staff, because I think somebody said it earlier, the most important person in that classroom is that classroom teacher. They make all the difference in the world. So anyway, I'll be here a while till Jamie unties me.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
7:30?
Thank you, Mrs. Stewart.
So I'm not going to be here at 7:30.
If I may, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but Mrs. Stewart has been invaluable, not only to me, but to this school, and just seeing how she works so closely with every staff member, the association, and the amount of respect that she has. She has been truly invaluable, and so I do appreciate this time and in the transition, because this is an important role for the school corporation and really for the community. So I do want to say thank you to her and for the opportunity to have this transition period with her, because I keep calling her my Yoda because she has been a fabulous mentor to work with.
Fantastic. Anything else for the good of the cause? Meeting adjourned.